Tonight, you'll step into the past. You are a Viking warrior, setting sail on a journey across the sea, one of adventure, hardship, and conquest. Over the next few hours, you will live through each moment as it unfolds, from the first call to arms to the clash of steel on distant shores. The story will move slowly, like the tide, carrying you deeper into another time, another life. There is no rush, no need to hold on too tightly. Just listen, breathe, and let yourself drift with the waves. As the world around you fades, the journey begins. Awakening to the war horn. A distant war horn cut through the pre-dawn mist, a long, low note that shivered through the wooden beams of the longhouse. I stirred, blinking against the darkness, the last wisps of uneasy dreams fading as the familiar sense of damp wool, wood smoke, and sweat settled around me. The air was thick with the warmth of many bodies, and the rhythmic sound of slow, measured breathing filled the dim space. The fire at the heart of the longhouse had burned low, its embers casting a dull orange glow along the packed earth floor. Shadows stretched high against the curved beams, flickering with each shift of the dying light. The scent of tallow and charred wood clung to my skin, mingling with the sharper tang of salt from the sea beyond the village. I pushed aside the thick fur covering my shoulders and sat up, feeling the chill of the morning creep over me. Another call from the war horn, this time closer, reverberated through my chest. The hush that had hung over the longhouse began to break. A murmur of movement, men stirring, the rustle of wool, the scrape of metal against wood. I reached for my tunic, the linen ruff under my fingers. As I pulled it over my head, my boots waited at the foot of my bedding, worn and softened from years of use. I laced them tight, the leather creaking slightly as I stood. Around me, the others were rousing, faces half lit by the smoldering fire. Some muttered quiet words to one another, voices low and heavy with sleep. Others remained silent, moving with slow, deliberate motions as they donned their armor, checked the edges of their blades, ran fingers along the bindings of their shields. There was no need for hurried commands. Each man knew his place, his duty. Today, we set sail. Stepping carefully over the sleeping mats, I made my way toward the door, where the cold morning air seeped through the narrow cracks in the wooden frame. My fingers found the latch, rough and worn beneath my touch. With a firm pull, I pushed open the door, and the world outside greeted me with a gust of sea-laced wind. The village stirred in the half-light of dawn, a restless hum of voices and movement. Beyond the cluster of longhouses, the fjord lay still, reflecting the first hints of morning along its dark waters. A few men had already gathered near the shoreline, their figures little more than shifting shadows against the mist. The war horn sounded once more, its call lingering in the air before fading into the hush of the sea. I stepped outside, the cold biting against my skin. My breath rose in pale clouds as I took in the sight before me. The longship waited, moored in the shallows, its sleek wooden hull rocking gently with the tide. The dragon-headed prow loomed above the water, its carved eyes staring out over the waves, unblinking as if already searching for distant shores. Behind me, the village came to life. Women and children emerged from doorways, some carrying baskets of dried fish and bread, others simply watching as the warriors made ready. My mother stood among them, her face unreadable. She held something wrapped in cloth, and as I approached, she extended it to me. A piece of bread, still warm from the embers. I took it without a word, nodding in thanks before tucking it into my belt. Nearby, our chieftain, a man of heavy build with a voice like breaking stone, stood addressing a small gathering of warriors. His words were quiet but firm, a final reminder of our purpose: gold, silver, land, the promise of riches beyond the sea. But the gods demanded courage, and the sea would claim its due. We knew this well. One by one, we moved toward the ship, our boots crunching over the frost-laced ground. The scent of brine thickened as we neared the water's edge. My fingers brushed the hilt of my sword, a familiar weight, as I stepped onto the wooden planks of the longship. The deck was slick with sea spray, but sturdy beneath my feet. The sail, still furled, bore the deep crimson of our people. The oars rested in their slots, waiting. The sea stretched before us, dark and endless, the horizon hidden beneath a veil of mist. This was the moment before the journey, the quiet before the storm. A slow breath filled my lungs, the salt air sharp and clean. Another horn blast rang out, final and clear. Behind me, the last of the men climbed aboard, their movements smooth with the ease of experience. The chieftain took his place at the helm, his gaze fixed forward. I settled onto the nearest bench, fingers curling around the oar. The wood was familiar, worn smooth by hands before mine. A moment of stillness. The village, our homes, our families, all stood behind us. Before us, only the sea. With a single command, we pushed off, the oars cutting deep into the water. The longship moved, gliding out into the fjord. The shore faded behind us, lost to the morning mist. The rhythmic dip and pull of the oars set the pace, a slow and steady beat that carried us forward. The world ahead was unknown, but the path had already been farewells. The morning was crisp, the frost crunching underfoot as I stepped onto the shoreline. The mist clung low to the fjord, curling in slow tendrils around the longship's prow. My brothers in arms gathered in small clusters, murmuring in hushed tones, their breath rising in the chill. Each of us knew what lay ahead, and the weight of it settled over us like the cold air itself. I clasped forearms with those nearest, exchanging quiet words of strength and honor. Promises were made of victory, of return. The bonds between us, forged in blood and hardship, were sealed anew with each firm grip, each measured nod. Some men spoke of their families, of the children they left behind, the wives who watched from the village with unreadable expressions. Others spoke only of the gods, of the favor we must earn, the omens they had seen in the flight of birds, the whisper of waves against the hull. Our chieftain stood before the longship, his heavy fur cloak shifting in the breeze. His voice carried over the gathering, steady and sure, naming the gods who would watch over us. Odin, who gave wisdom in war. Thor, who brought the storm and the strength to weather it. Frey, who promised land and bounty. His words settled deep in my chest, a grounding force amid the uncertainty of the sea. A small fire burned at the water's edge, its flames licking hungrily at the offering left upon the stones. A carved wooden figure, a handful of grain, a few drops of mead. The gods would take what they would, and we could only hope it was enough. One by one we stepped forward, touching the hilt of our weapons to the flames, sealing our fates. The time for doubt had passed. As the sun broke through the mist, turning the fjord to gold, we turned toward the ship, ready to claim our place upon the waves. The war horn had sounded, and the longhouse emptied in solemn purpose. Now we stood upon the shore, our boots stamping dark imprints into the frost-laced earth. The fjord stretched before us, its waters black and still, reflecting the heavy sky above. The mist curled around our feet, weaving between us, as if reluctant to release us to the waiting sea. I pulled my cloak tighter around my shoulders, the thick wool heavy with the scent of home, wood smoke, damp wool and the faint trace of tallow from the longhouse fire. Around me the others did the same, some rubbing warmth into their hands, others simply standing in silence, gazing toward the longship. The chieftain raised his hand, and the murmurs died away. His gaze swept over us, taking the measure of each man in turn. His beard was thick, threaded with streaks of silver, his eyes sharp and knowing. He had led raids before, had seen men return with their arms full of plunder, and had seen others never return at all. He spoke of our ancestors, of those who had set forth upon these same waters with the same hopes, the same fears. He spoke of the gods, of the gifts they required, the courage they demanded. He reminded us that the sea would test us, that the sword would judge us. Only the worthy would stand before Odin in the golden halls of Valhalla. A murmur of agreement rippled through the group. Some men touched the charms hanging from their necks, Thor's hammer, a rune carved into bone, a simple twist of iron. Others clenched their fists at their sides, as if gripping unseen weapons. Nearby, a boy barely old enough to fight stood apart from the rest, his face pale in the dim light. His hands twitched at his belt, where a small seax hung, its edge barely sharpened. I stepped beside him, clapping a hand on his shoulder. He looked up, his eyes wide and uncertain. "Breathe deep," I murmured. "The air here, the smell of the sea, take it with you. Remember it." He nodded stiffly, his jaw tightening. He would learn, as we all had. The first battle was always the hardest. A woman stepped forward from the gathered onlookers, her thick braid draped over one shoulder. She held a small bundle wrapped in cloth, her eyes shadowed. My mother. I met her gaze, and for a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she held the bundle out to me. "Dried fish. Bread," she said, her voice low. "It will not last long at sea, but take it." I accepted it, tucking it into my belt. "Thank you." She reached out, fingers ghosting over my arm before dropping away. It was not a plea, not a request, a command. I nodded once, then turned away before the weight of it settled too heavily upon my chest. The longship loomed ahead, its dragon-headed prow cutting through the mist. The carved eyes stared outward, unblinking, as if already searching for distant shores. The wood was slick beneath my fingers as I ran my hand along the hull, feeling the strength in the grain. This ship would carry us far. If the gods willed it, it would bring us home. One by one we boarded, stepping onto the deck with sure movements. The chieftain took his place at the helm, his hands steady on the tiller. I found my seat among the rowers, my fingers curling around the worn wood of the oar. The sea stretched before us, dark and endless. A final horn blast split the morning air. A single command rang out. The oars dipped into the water, cutting through the surface in smooth, practiced strokes. The longship moved, gliding forward, carrying us away from the shore, away from the familiar comfort of home. The village grew smaller behind us, its rooftops swallowed by the mist, the faces of those left behind blurred, lost to distance. The wind filled the sail, the salt air sharp in my lungs. The journey had begun. The first pull of the oars. The longship groaned as it slid free of the shallows, its wooden hull scraping softly against the pebbled shore before gliding into deeper waters. The first pull of the oars sent a ripple through the deck beneath me, a rhythmic lurch that I felt deep in my bones. I tightened my grip on the worn shaft of my oar, fingers curling around the smoothed wood as I prepared for the next stroke. The sea was calm, but the tide pressed against us, a steady force resisting our departure. The chieftain's voice rang over the water, calling the cadence. My muscles tensed, and I heaved, the oar dipping into the cold embrace of the fjord. A dozen others did the same in perfect unison, the rhythmic dip and pull of wood into water setting the pace. The longship surged forward, the creak of the oarlocks, and the low murmur of exertion, the only sounds beyond the gentle lap of waves against the hull. Salt spray stung my face as the wind shifted, carrying the briny scent of the open sea. I breathed it in, the taste of it settling on my tongue, sharp and clean. The fjord stretched ahead, its towering cliffs dark against the pale sky, their jagged edges softened by a veil of morning mist. Ravens wheeled above, their cries lost in the steady beat of our oars. The rowers beside me moved in practiced rhythm, their bodies shifting with each pull. The weight of the voyage settled into my limbs, a slow burning ache that I welcomed. This was the price of the sea, the toll paid for every mile won against the tide. Across from me, an older warrior, Byrne, a man with arms thick as tree trunks, grunted as he leaned into the oar. His beard was flecked with gray, and his eyes, deep-set and knowing, flicked to mine. "Feels good, doesn't it?" he rumbled, his voice rough as the sea itself. I nodded, though I said nothing. There was no need. The quiet understanding passed between us, an unspoken bond forged by the rhythm of the oars, the pull of the journey ahead. The chieftain called again, his voice steady. "Row." We obeyed, the longship gliding forward, the fjord narrowing behind us as we neared its mouth. The land that had cradled us, the village with its smoke-threaded rooftops, the longhouse where I had woken, all of it drifted away, slipping into the distance. Ahead, the open sea stretched endless and unknown, its gray surface dappled with the first golden light of the sun. The wind stirred the crimson sail above, though it remained furled for now. Not until we cleared the fjord and met the true breath of the sea would we let it fly. For now, it was the oars that carried us, the strength of our backs that drove us forward. A gull cried, wheeling low over the water before vanishing into the mist. The sky was vast, pale blue streaked with wisps of white, the promise of fair weather. My shoulders burned with the effort of rowing, but I relished it. The deep, slow pull, the steady rhythm that bound us all together. We passed between the towering cliffs that marked the fjord's mouth, the last gate before the open sea. The waters darkened here, the shallows giving way to depths unfathomable. The wind carried a different scent now, something wilder, untamed. A shudder ran through the longship as the waves shifted beneath us. The sea was no longer gentle. It rolled, vast and unyielding, its surface rippling with unseen currents. The oars bit deep, their rhythm unwavering, but the resistance was greater now. The ship rose and fell with the water's breath, the first taste of the journey's true beginning. The chieftain stood tall at the helm, his gaze fixed on the horizon. He did not look back. None of us did. The shore was behind us, the land that had given us life now a shadow on the water. Only forward now, only onward. The order came at last. Stow the oars, raise the sail. A rush of movement, men leaped to their feet, hands reaching for the ropes, voices calling out as the crimson sail unfurled. It billowed high above, catching the wind in a single thunderous motion. The longship shuddered, then surged forward, no longer bound to the pull of our oars alone. I exhaled, rolling my shoulders as the strain eased. My hands, red and raw from the wood, relaxed against my knees. The sea stretched ahead, vast and waiting. The voyage had truly begun. The longship rode the swells, the wind filling its sail, the oars resting at last in their places. The sun climbed higher, its light glinting off the waves. The horizon called to us, distant and endless, and we answered, sailing toward what lay beyond. The hunger of the sea. The sky had turned to pewter, a great unbroken expanse of shifting clouds, pressing low over the endless sea. Hours had passed since we left the fjord behind, the sight of home swallowed by distance and mist. The longship rose and fell with the rolling swells, its oaken hull creaking as the wind tugged at the half-unfurled sail. The oars had long been stowed, the wind now guiding us forward, though our hands still itched with the need for action. Salt crusted my lips, carried by the spray that leapt up from the bow. The scent of brine and damp wood filled my nose, mingling with the oil and sweat of the men around me. My fingers traced the worn haft of my axe, the familiar grooves in the wood grounding me. The hours had stretched long, and the sea, vast and unchanging, played tricks on the mind. There was only the ship, the wind and the water stretching to the edge of the world. Then, through the shifting mist, a shadow appeared, a ship, dark and silent, just beyond the reach of the waves between us. It moved slowly, its sail hanging like a lazy thing, neither fully catching the wind, nor fully stowed. It watched, a murmur passed through our ranks, low and wordless. Hands tightened on axe handles, fingers flexed over the rims of shields. The chieftain at the helm did not move, but his shoulders had stiffened, his stance sharpening like a blade held just before the strike. No command was given, none was needed. Every man on this ship knew what it meant to see another vessel lingering on the open sea. The rival ship drifted, neither advancing nor retreating. It was testing us, waiting to see if we would flinch first. The air between us felt thin, stretched taut over the swelling water. My pulse drummed in my ears, though I forced myself to remain still. A warrior does not waste energy on fear. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of something old, wood and tar, metal and sweat. A whisper of voices reached us, too far to discern, but present nonetheless. My grip on my weapon tightened. The sea was patient, the gods even more so. The sky continued to darken, the clouds thickening into something heavy, something looming. The gulls that had followed us since morning were silent now, their shapes barely visible against the gray expanse above. The water rocked the ship in slow, deliberate motions, as if the very sea was watching. A sharp creak sounded as one of our men adjusted his stance, shifting his weight on the deck. The rival ship stirred in response, its sail twitching, an oar dipping briefly into the water before pulling back. It was a dance, each movement deliberate, each hesitation measured. Would it come to blows? Would steel meet steel before the day's end? Or would we pass like shadows in the mist, untested for now but marked for another day? The waiting was a battle of its own. The tension stretched, long and thin as a bowstring pulled to its limit. Then, as if the gods themselves had decided the moment was not yet ripe, the rival ship began to drift away. The mist thickened around it, swallowing its dark shape, until there was nothing but the sea once more. A slow breath left my lungs. Around me, shoulders eased, grips loosened. The threat had passed, for now, but it would not be forgotten. The sea stretched before us again, endless and indifferent. The waves carried us forward, deeper into the unknown, and the journey continued. Clash on the waves. The moment hangs in the salt, heavy air, stretched taut like a bowstring. The rival ship had not vanished into the mist after all. It had waited, lingering in the shifting gray, watching for its moment. Now, with the wind behind it and the sea surging beneath its hull, it comes for us. A war cry rises, cutting through the wind and waves. The enemy longship bears down, its prow slicing the water, oars beating like the wings of a raven in flight. Shields lift, hands tighten on weapons. The air is thick with brine and the iron scent of anticipation. Then the first arrow sings. It whistles past my ear, embedding itself in the wooden mast behind me with a dull thud. Another follows, striking a shield with a sharp crack. A cry of pain rings out from somewhere down the deck. A man falls, clutching at the shaft buried deep in his shoulder. The others close ranks around him, shields overlapping in practiced unity. The enemy ship is close now, close enough that I can see the wild light in their eyes, the sweat gleaming on their brows. The men at their prow raise their axes, their voices lost to the roaring sea. Their ship tilts as it crashes into ours, the impact jarring through the planks beneath my boots. A splintering sound, deep and groaning, fills the air as the hulls grind together. There is no time to think, only to move. The first warrior leaps across, his axe raised high. I meet him with my shield, the force of his swing rattling through my arm. He staggers back, finding his footing just as another follows behind him. The deck becomes a battlefield, a chaos of steel and fury. I swing my axe, the blade catching the edge of a shield, knocking it aside. My opponent lunges, his sword slicing through the air where my head had been moments before. I twist away, feeling the heat of his breath, the sweat that beads on my brow. The ship tilts again, the sea swelling beneath us, and for a heartbeat, everything is unsteady, the waves dictating the flow of battle. A man slips on the blood-slick deck, his weapon skittering from his grasp. Another warrior falls with an arrow in his throat. The sounds are deafening, the clash of iron, the cries of the wounded, the guttural shouts of men locked in struggle. But beneath it all, the sea still speaks, its voice ever present, lapping against the hull, patient and eternal. I catch sight of our chieftain at the stern, his sword rising and falling, each strike measured and brutal. His shield is splintered, his face streaked with sweat and blood, but he stands firm. Around him, our men fight like wolves, their movements sure, their purpose clear. Another warrior lunges at me. I bring my axe up in time, blocking his strike, but the force sends me stumbling back. My boots scrape against the deck. The enemy presses forward. I see his intent in the set of his jaw, the gleam of his blade. He means to end me, but I am not so easily taken. I drive forward, my shield colliding with his chest. He staggers, and in that moment, I bring my axe down. The impact shudders up my arm. He falls. A horn sounds, a long, deep note that cuts through the madness. For a moment, everything stills. The enemy ship is pulling away. Their numbers have thinned. Their leader, a man with a scarred cheek and eyes dark as the depths, stands at the edge of his ship, his gaze locking with ours. He does not speak, but the message is clear. This is not over. The sea stretches between us once more as they retreat into the mist, their ship a dark shape, fading into the gray. I exhale, my chest heaving. The battle is over. For now, the dead are counted, the wounded tended to. The deck is washed clean with seawater. Though the scent of blood still lingers in the air, the waves carry us forward, ever onward, toward the next horizon. The last man falls. The clash of steel has faded. My breath comes in ragged bursts, the world slowly settling into a strange calm, as though the chaos of the battle is unwilling to let go of its grip. The deck beneath my boots is slick with blood, the salt air now mingling with the bitter scent of iron and death. My shield is heavier than it was, slick with blood that isn't mine. The pulse of the ocean swells beneath the ship, the same rhythm that was once so familiar, but now feels as though it's dragging me into its depths. The enemy longship lurches, its wooden bones groaning in protest. Its once proud sail flutters weakly in the wind, now torn and ragged from our fight. The survivors, those few who remain, are scattered across the deck, their eyes wide with fear, hands raised in a final plea for mercy. The sea, still unforgiving, churns beneath them, pulling away the wreckage of their ship and their pride. I stand at the bow, my feet planted firmly on the blood-slick wood. My axe, now heavy in my grip, drips with the remnants of the enemy's fight. My eyes still sharp, despite the haze of exhaustion that clouds my thoughts, sweep across the remaining crew. There are no more cries of defiance, No more shouts of rage or fury, only the soft choking gasps of men, broken by the weight of defeat. The sea is vast, an endless horizon stretching before us, yet I can't shake the feeling that it's closing in, swallowing the wreckage of our battle. The cries of the dying become distant, almost muffled by the sound of waves crashing against the ship's broken hull. The last few men, their faces pale, their bodies trembling with the shock of what has come to pass, cower in the shadow of my presence. I take a slow step forward, the creaking of the ship beneath me a steady reminder of its fragility. The blood of my enemies stains my tunic, streaks of crimson smeared across the fabric. The salty wind blows through my hair, and for a moment I stand still, letting the breeze cool my fevered skin. It is as if the storm itself has passed, leaving nothing but the quiet aftermath. There is no need for more words. The moment feels infinite, stretching in a silence that is only broken by the whispers of the sea and the occasional groan of the ship's wooden frame. I watch as the last of the enemy men, their eyes wild with desperation, step forward. Their swords are still drawn, though their arms are weak, their faces pale beneath the bloodied grime of battle. The world slows as I raise my axe once more. I do not need to swing it with force. There is no need for the violence that once surged within me. The battle is over. The enemy is finished. One by one they fall, their pleas lost to the sea that swallows them whole. There is no joy in this, no satisfaction, only the weight of what we have done. The ship groans beneath me, the wood creaking as the last man slips from the deck, his body vanishing beneath the waves. I watch as the sea takes him, the waves closing over his form, as though it had never been. For a moment there is nothing but the emptiness, the silence of the aftermath. The sun hangs low in the sky, casting a dim muted light over the battlefield that once raged. The distant horizon, once clouded with the chaos of battle, now seems impossibly calm, as if the world itself has taken a deep breath and exhaled the last remnants of violence. The deck beneath me feels heavier now, weighed down with the bodies of the fallen, both friend and foe. My limbs ache, the exhaustion of the fight creeping into my bones. Yet there is a strange peace in this moment. The tension that had filled the air just moments before has drained away, leaving only the soft murmur of the sea and the quiet rustling of the wind in the rigging. I glance around the ship, taking in the carnage. The men I fought beside stand near, their faces hard, their expressions unreadable. They too are weary, their bodies battered, their faces bloodied. Yet there is something else in their eyes now, something that mirrors my own thoughts. The battle is over, but the cost of victory lingers in the air like the scent of smoke. The ship lurches again, and I steady myself, gripping the edge of the railing as the waves rise higher, pushing against the hull. The storm that once raged is now nothing more than a memory, its fury spent. The ship crests a swell, and I look out over the water. The once dominant enemy vessel is sinking, its remnants vanishing into the deep, the last echoes of our battle swallowed by the vastness of the sea. My body trembles from the tension, but it is not from fear. No, this is something else, an overwhelming weariness that settles deep within my chest. I feel it in the bones of my legs, in the tightness of my arms. It is the weight of what we have done, the understanding that there is no true victory in bloodshed, only survival. We have taken what was ours, but what will we return to? The glory of war may fade, but the toll it takes will stay with us. I take a slow, deep breath, allowing the salty air to fill my lungs. The smell of the sea is familiar, comforting in a way despite the bloodshed that lingers around us. The sound of the waves is soothing, the rhythm of their movement grounding. I close my eyes for a moment, letting the exhaustion take hold. There is no need to hurry. There is no need for the next step to come quickly. For now, I am still. The warriors around me stand in similar silence, their expressions distant, their bodies heavy with the weight of their actions. Some glance toward the horizon, their minds already drifting back to home, to the warmth of the hearth and the familiar faces of those they left behind. Others stare out at the water, their eyes unblinking, as though searching for something in the vast open expanse. But it is not yet time to return. The journey is not yet finished. As the last of the enemy ship sinks into the depths, I turn away from the wreckage, toward the bow of our ship. The sea stretches before me, endless like the journey ahead. There is no more fighting to be done here. We have won, but the real war, whatever it may be, lies beyond the horizon. The wind whispers in my ear, urging me onward, calling me to the next chapter of this long, unending voyage. The journey is far from over, but for now, we sail on, leaving the echoes of battle behind us, carried away by the restless sea. And in that moment, as the ship moves further into the open water, I can almost hear the call of the gods, distant and faint, urging me forward into the unknown. The storm has passed, the victory is ours, but the journey continues, and so we sail. The storm's wrath. The sea is no longer my ally. The wind howls, furious and relentless, as if a god himself has set his wrath upon us. I feel it in my bones, in the way the ship shudders under the gusts, the waves crashing against the hull like the roar of thunder. My hands grip the oar with a vice-like hold, knuckles bleached white, but still I pull. I am tethered to the ship, to this journey, to the sea, yet, with every pull of the oar, I wonder if the storm itself might tear us from the world. The ship creaks, its wooden frame groaning under the strain. The rain lashes against my face, cold and biting, like tiny needles stabbing into my skin. My cloak is soaked, heavy against my shoulders, but I feel no weight, only the burning ache in my arms as I row. The rhythm is no longer steady, the usual comforting dip of the oars replaced by frantic, desperate strokes. I push harder, fighting against the fury of the storm, praying that the gods, whichever ones are listening, will give us mercy. The waves rise, towering over us like mountains, threatening to swallow the ship whole. The longship crests the first swell, and for a heartbeat, I feel weightless, as if the world itself is holding its breath. But then the sea crashes down again, the ship pitching violently to one side, and I struggle to keep my balance. The wooden planks beneath my boots are slick with rain and salt water, and the spray stings my eyes, blurring the world around me. I brace myself, my legs spread wide for stability, and I keep rowing. The oars dip in and out of the water, with an uneven rhythm, each stroke harder than the last. The wind howls in my ears, drowning out all sound but the storm's fury. It is as if the very sky has opened its mouth and is screaming at us, deafening and endless. The storm is not merely a force of nature. It is a living, breathing thing, alive with the rage of 1,000 gods. A wave rises to my left, taller than the mast itself, and the longship groans, its timbers creaking under the pressure. I hear the shout of the helmsman, words lost to the wind, his voice straining to be heard above the storm. The ship leans, tilting dangerously, as the wave crashes over the side. For a moment I think the ship will capsize, but we ride the wave, cresting the swell, only to plummet into the next trough, a dizzying descent into darkness. My heart pounds in my chest, but my focus remains on the oar. The rhythm has become instinctive now, my arms moving with practiced precision, even as the storm tries to tear us apart. My fingers ache, the muscles in my arms burning from the effort, but I cannot stop. I will not stop. The storm can roar and rage, but we are not broken yet, not while I still have breath in my lungs. The deck beneath my feet shifts again as another wave strikes. The ship groans in protest, but we hold firm. The rain stings harder now, each droplet feeling like a lash against my skin, and the wind is no longer just a cold force. It has become a sharp, biting thing, cutting into me with each gust. My cloak is plastered to my body, soaked through, and the salt water stings my lips, mixing with the taste of fear in the back of my throat. I glance up, squinting through the sheets of rain that blur the horizon. The sky is an angry, churning mass of clouds, dark and heavy, pressing down on us. There is no light, no sun to guide us, only the storm and the endless ocean. The ship's sails flap wildly in the wind, the ropes strained as they hold the mast in place. It is a battle between man and nature, and right now nature is winning. The helmsman fights to keep us on course, his hands steady on the wheel despite the chaos around him. I can see the strain in his face, his brow furrowed in concentration, his eyes narrowed against the spray. He is a man of the sea, like the rest of us, but even the most seasoned sailor cannot command the storm. All we can do is hold on and pray. The waves are growing larger now, rising up like walls of water, one after the other, each more violent than the last. I feel the ship dip and dive with each wave, the sound of the timbers groaning beneath us a constant reminder of our fragility. The wind shifts again, howling louder, as if a god himself is pushing us toward the edge of the world. But I will not let the sea claim us. I will not let this storm break us. Another wave crashes over the side, and I feel the weight of the water press down on the ship. The longship pitches violently, and I stumble, my foot slipping on the slick wood. My oar jerks out of my hands, but I lunge forward, grabbing it just before it is swept away by the storm. I regain my footing and resume rowing, my breath coming faster now, my heart racing. We are not defeated, not yet. The rain is unrelenting, the cold seeping into my bones, but the warmth of determination burns within me. I focus on the oar, the rhythm, the pull and release. I do not think of the storm, of the sky, or of the waves that threaten to swallow us whole. I think only of the ship, of the men beside me, and of the journey ahead. This storm will pass, as all storms do, and when it does, we will still be here. The ship lurches again, and I brace myself, digging my heels into the wet wood as the bow rises to meet the next wave. The sound of the wind fills my ears, the sea roaring around us like a living beast, but through it all I keep rowing. The storm is a force of nature, yes, but so are we. We are warriors, sailors, sons of the sea, and we will not be broken. Minutes stretch into what feels like hours, the storm a relentless beast that shows no mercy. But slowly, ever so slowly, the intensity begins to lessen. The waves grow smaller, the wind loses some of its bite. I dare not stop rowing just yet, but I can feel it. The shift, the storm is tiring, its fury spent. The rain, though still heavy, no longer stings as it did before, and the ship's rocking grows gentler. I glance over at the helmsman, who nods at me, his face etched with exhaustion but his eyes still sharp. We are still here, still alive, and that, I realize, is all that matters. The storm will not defeat us. We have survived. As the wind begins to shift, and the waves settle into a more manageable rhythm, I slow my strokes, though I keep my grip firm on the oar. The worst is over. We have weathered the storm. Now there is only the calm, the steady pull of the sea, and the promise of land waiting somewhere beyond the horizon. The journey continues, and I, weary but unbroken, will continue with it. The dawn after chaos. The storm is gone now, but its echoes linger in the creaking of the ship, in the silence that hangs between us all. The air, thick with the salt of the sea, is cool against my skin, but I do not feel cold. My muscles ache, stiff from hours of battling the fury of the waves, and my hands are raw from gripping the oars. Yet, there is a strange peace now, an emptiness where the storm's fury once raged. The chaos has passed, and with it, the noise that filled my ears has been replaced by a profound stillness. I stand at the stern, leaning against the ship's railing, eyes fixed on the horizon, where the first light of dawn begins to stretch across the sky. The darkness that once pressed down on us, suffocating and all-encompassing, has lifted. In its place, a pale, muted light begins to break through the clouds. The storm has left behind a broken sky, streaked with purples and grays, the remnants of a battle fought between the heavens and the sea. It is a sky that tells of struggle, yet also of rebirth. The ship creaks beneath me, its timbers groaning as it settles into the gentle rhythm of the calmer sea. The sails, battered and torn, flap weakly in the light breeze, the ropes still strained from the storm's ferocity. The once proud longship looks tired, its edges weathered, but it is still afloat. It has weathered the storm, as we have, and we are still here. The thought brings a quiet relief, a softening in my chest, though the weight of the losses we suffered still lingers, like a shadow that refuses to leave. The crew is scattered across the deck, moving in slow, deliberate motions. Some of them are bent over the railings, vomiting the remnants of the sea that they could not keep down during the storm. Others sit in silence, heads bowed, hands clasped in silent prayer for those lost to the waves. The wind carries their murmured words, soft and reverent, over the still waters, a sound that feels almost sacred. I glance around the ship, my gaze lingering on the faces of my fellow warriors. There are no words between us. None are needed. We have all seen the price of survival. Some of the men are tending to the wounded, their movements slow, careful. Others are sweeping the deck, clearing the detritus of the storm. Ropes, broken splinters of wood, shattered crates, each small task, a quiet acknowledgement of what has been lost, but also of what remains. I turn my attention back to the horizon. The darkness has faded entirely now, replaced by the soft glow of the early morning light. It is a pale, delicate light, as if the world itself is afraid to fully return to itself after the storm's fury. The sky is still heavy with clouds, but there are openings, small gaps through which the sunlight pours in, like fingers reaching through the dark. I watch as the light spreads slowly across the water, painting the surface in shimmering hues of silver and gold, as if the sea itself is waking from a long, troubled slumber. The ship has turned in the direction of the land we know is somewhere ahead. The crew does not speak of it, but I can feel the shift in the air, the quiet urgency that comes with knowing that land is near. It is a distant line on the horizon, so faint that I might mistake it for a trick of the light. But no, it is there, a dark strip of earth against the fading night sky, the first sign of land after the endless stretch of open sea. I exhale slowly, the breath I hadn't realized I was holding leaving me in a long, steady stream. The sea is no longer a wall of chaos, but a gentle companion, moving under us with a soft, almost tender rhythm. The sound of the waves lapping against the hull is comforting now, a lullaby to remind me that though the storm has passed, the journey is far from over. We are still afloat, still alive, and soon we will reach the shore. The men around me are still, each lost in his own thoughts. There is no joy, no celebration. We are survivors, and the price of that survival is paid in the silence of our hearts. The storm took much from us, some of our number, our strength, our spirit, but it has not taken everything. We remain, and for that we will give thanks. I glance over at the helmsman, whose hands are steady on the wheel. His face is shadowed, but his eyes are focused, scanning the horizon with a quiet intensity. He, too, knows what lies ahead, what awaits us on that distant land. But for now, he says nothing. His silence speaks volumes, and I understand it completely. The ship moves slowly through the water, the wind now calm enough to fill the remaining sail. It is not a fast journey, but the steady pace is welcome. The storm's fury has left us battered, but not broken, and the calm waters now feel like a gift, a moment of respite before we reach the shore. As I stand there, watching the light grow stronger, I feel the tension in my body begin to ease. The sharpness of the storm still lingers in my mind, but the edges have softened. The world is awakening, just as I am, and though the remnants of the night's chaos still cling to the edges of my thoughts, the dawning light brings with it a promise of something new. The land draws closer now, the dark line on the horizon becoming more defined. It is still far, but the promise of it is undeniable. There is no great fanfare, no sudden rush to reach it. We do not hurry. There is no need. We have weathered the storm, and we will reach the shore when it is time. I let my eyes wander over the calm sea, watching the soft swell of the water as it moves around the ship. The waves are no longer the savage force they were during the storm, but gentle swells that rock the ship in a comforting rhythm. The air is fresher now, the salt a little less biting, though the scent of the ocean still fills my nostrils rich and sharp. The sky above is brightening, the faintest hint of blue starting to appear where the clouds break. It is not the deep blue of a cloudless day, but a soft, muted shade, like the first stroke of color on a canvas yet unfinished. It reminds me of the sky before a long journey, when the day is still young and full of promise. We have made it through the worst of it. The storm is gone, and soon we will be on land. But for now, all we can do is wait and watch as the world awakens around us, taking its first breaths after the storm. And in this moment, I am at peace, my soul tired but content. We have survived, and now we sail quietly toward a new beginning. The wind is softer now, no longer howling in rage but whispering gently through the rigging. The sails fill with a steady breeze, pulling us ever closer to the land. It is a calm, this moment between chaos and discovery, a time to breathe before the next chapter of our journey begins. And so we wait, the quiet dawning of the new day carrying us forward, step by steady step, toward the shore that lies ahead. A foreign shore. The ship moves silently through the water, its hull scraping against the shallows of the cove with a soft, muted groan. There is no wind here, no wave to push us forward, only the ebb and flow of the tide as it tugs at the ship's keel. The shore is close now, so close that I can almost reach out and touch the rough stone of the cliffs that rise sharply from the sand. They are jagged, dark, as if they've stood there for centuries, unmoved by the sea, silent guardians of this forgotten place. The scent of the sea has begun to fade, replaced by the earthy smell of damp stone and wet soil. The air is thick with it, heavy with the weight of the earth itself. I watch the land draw nearer, my fingers gripping the edge of the longship. The rest of the crew is quiet, as if we all sense that the moment we touch the land, things will change. There will be no return to the open sea once we step onto this foreign shore. The horizon is still veiled by the heavy clouds, the sky a deep iron gray, threatening more rain, though for now, there is only the soft patter of the waves against the rocks. The shore is dark. There is no sun to warm the earth, only a distant and cold light filtering through the clouds, casting long shadows across the land. The boat shudders as it grinds against the sand, and the crew begins to move. My legs feel stiff as I rise from my seat, my boots sinking into the soft earth as I step onto the shore. The sand is damp, clinging to the soles of my boots, and the ground beneath is uneven. The scent of the earth fills my nostrils, deep and rich, a far cry from the salt of the sea. It is a strange land, unfamiliar and unknown. My heart beats a little faster, but the thrill of it, the unfamiliarity, only heightens my senses. I am a hunter, and this place is prey. I take a slow step forward, the soft crunch of the wet sand beneath my boots, the only sound that breaks the stillness. The crew moves around me, their voices low, barely more than a murmur in the thick air. There is no hurry to disembark. There is no need for haste. The cove is quiet, its secrecy undeniable, and we know that the time to act will come. But for now, we wait. We listen. We prepare. I draw in a breath, letting the dampness of the air fill my lungs. My body feels heavy with the weight of the storm, but the shore is different. It feels solid beneath my feet, grounding me. The rocks at the edge of the cove are slick with moisture, their surfaces black and gleaming, slick as oil. I step carefully, my boots finding purchase on the uneven stones, making my way toward the cliffs. They loom above me, casting a long shadow across the shore, and I wonder how many times they've seen men like us come to their feet, how many have fallen beneath their cold gaze. The rest of the crew is beginning to unload the ship, preparing to make camp, but I do not follow them. Instead, I move toward the sand, where tracks are visible. The earth here is soft, the sand leaving marks easily, and I can see the faint indentations left by the feet of others, small shallow prints, not far from the water's edge. They are fresh too, recent. A slight frown pulls at my brow as I kneel down, brushing the damp sand aside with my fingers. The tracks are not from animals. No, they are human, monks. I can see the way their feet have dragged through the sand, careful, deliberate. Their gait is different from ours, softer, more deliberate. They are not in a hurry. My eyes scan the tracks, my thoughts sharpening. These are no warriors. They do not move like men who are ready for battle. These are the footsteps of men who walk in peace, or perhaps in fear. I straighten slowly, my eyes moving inland, tracing the path of the tracks as they wind toward the trees. The forest is dark, its edges almost hidden in the shadows of the cliffs, but beyond the tree line, I know there must be something. Villages or monks, whatever they are prey now. It does not matter what they call themselves. We have come to take what is ours, and their lives will feed our hunger, just as the storm has fed our fury. I take a moment to survey the rest of the shore. The longship is now fully beached, the crew unloading provisions, weapons and tools, preparing for whatever comes next. I do not join them. There is no need. My focus is elsewhere. The tracks in the sand are leading me somewhere, and I will follow them. The air feels different here, thick with the scent of wet moss and the rich, loamy earth that blankets the forest floor. I can hear the rustling of leaves in the distance, the soft sigh of wind moving through the trees. The world is alive with sound, yet it feels muted somehow, as if the land itself is holding its breath, waiting for something. The sea, so loud and violent just a short while ago, now lies silent behind me, its waves reduced to little more than a whisper against the rocks. The only sounds now are those of the forest, and they are faint, soft like secrets. I make my way toward the tracks, careful not to disturb them. My steps slow, deliberate. The sand here is soft, and each step leaves an impression behind, but I try to keep my movements as light as possible. I have learned long ago to move like the wind, silent and unnoticed, a shadow in the night. I am a hunter, and this is my territory. As I move inland, I feel the weight of the land pressing down on me. The trees grow thicker here, their trunks wide and gnarled, reaching high into the misty sky. The air smells of damp wood and earth, and I can feel the moisture seeping into my cloak, weighing it down. My hand rests on the hilt of my axe, not because I expect to use it, but because it is a part of me, a comfort. It is always by my side, even when I do not need it. The tracks continue to wind deeper into the forest, and I follow them without hesitation, my senses alive with the quiet anticipation of what lies ahead. The monks, or whatever they are close now. I can feel it. I can almost hear the faint rustle of their movement in the underbrush, the soft brush of fabric against the leaves. As I walk deeper into the trees, the air grows heavier, the shadows longer, the The scent of wet earth becomes stronger, mingled with the faintest trace of smoke. It is a smell I recognize well. Wood smoke, fire, life. The village cannot be far now. They must know we are here. I wonder if they will try to hide or run, or if they will stand and face us. There is no time to think on it. The land ahead holds secrets, and I will uncover them. The hunt has begun, and soon we will claim what is ours. The soft rustling of the leaves around me quickens, and I know that the time for silence has passed. The hunt is no longer a quiet thing. It is time to find what lies ahead, to track what I know must be there. The tracks in the sand and the air that surrounds me, it is all leading me to something. I will find it. The hunt will not be denied. I move forward, the land growing darker with each step, the shadows of the trees lengthening, but the thrill of the hunt pulses in my veins. I am close now, and when the time comes I will strike. The first blow. The scent of incense hangs thick in the air, cloying and suffocating, as if the gods themselves are too close. The flickering candlelight dances across the stone walls of the monastery, casting long, trembling shadows. For a moment, the world feels suspended between two realities, the stillness of the night outside and the rising storm inside. I am at the threshold now. The heavy door of the monastery, splintering beneath the force of my axe, the wood giving way with a sound that is far too loud, too final for the quiet that came before. The door collapses with a crash, a thunderous sound in the otherwise hushed space. I feel the tremor beneath my boots, the vibrations of the ancient stone floor reverberating through my legs. The silence that follows is deafening, pregnant with fear. It hangs in the air, thick and heavy, as the light from the candles flickers, casting strange wavering patterns on the walls. The flames seem to hesitate, unsure of their place in this moment, uncertain of the men who have come to claim this place for their own. I step forward, my breath steady, controlled. The weight of my axe is a familiar comfort in my hands, its handle worn from years of use. It is more than a weapon. It is an extension of myself, a part of my soul, a tool of both survival and power. The monks are still, their eyes wide with terror, their robes draped over their bodies in pale, trembling shapes. They have nowhere to go. There is no escape. The gods they prayed to, their idols, their sacred rites, none of it can save them now. As I move deeper into the dimly lit hall, the world becomes a blur of smoke and shadows. The flickering light from the candles casts strange shapes on the stone floor, and the air is heavy with the scent of burning incense. The thick smoke stings my eyes, but I don't flinch. I am no stranger to the smoke of battle, the scent of fear, the taste of blood in the air. This place, with its holy silence and soft walls, is not the world I know, but I've crossed into it now, and there is no turning back. I can hear the soft shuffling of monks' sandals against the stone floor, the faint rustle of their robes as they move quickly, almost silently around the room. They are scattering like insects, seeking any cover they can find. The flicker of silver catches my eye as one of them fumbles to reach for something hidden beneath a pile of old parchment, perhaps some sacred relic, some last-ditch hope that it might shield them from us. But I do not pause. I do not hesitate. I feel the power in my limbs, the surety in my step. I know why I am here. A movement to my left, a monk, small and frail, attempting to escape into a dark alcove, his body trembling. He will not make it. His eyes, wide and pleading, meet mine. But I do not waver. There is no mercy here. There is only the cold, hard truth of the raid. With a single sweep of my arm, I bring the axe down onto the heavy wooden chest beside me, splitting it open with a single blow. Silver coins spill out, glinting in the dim light like a trail of stars across the floor. The glimmer catches the light, but it is not enough to distract me from my purpose. The monk freezes. His fingers twitch, reaching for something, anything that might give him the courage to stand against the storm we have brought, but he is too slow. I hear the other raiders moving behind me, their steps heavy against the stone floor, their breaths ragged and harsh with anticipation. We are wolves in this sacred place, and there is no refuge here for the lambs. I turn slowly, letting my gaze sweep over the room. The space is large, but the shadows are deep, consuming everything. The stone walls are thick with age, each crack and line carved by time and the hands of men long forgotten. The altar stands at the far end of the hall, draped in faded cloths, and for a moment I almost feel a pang of something. What is it? Regret? Guilt? But it passes as quickly as it comes, swallowed by the rush of adrenaline that begins to hum through my veins. The gods of this place are silent, their presence long gone. There is only us now. One of the monks, his face pale, his hands trembling, rises from behind a pillar, his arms raised in desperate plea. He calls out in a language I do not understand, his voice trembling with fear and prayer, but there is no answer. No god will save him. With a single motion, I lift the axe again and strike. The sound is satisfying, sharp, echoing. The monk falls, his body crumpling to the floor like a broken doll, his prayers lost in the echo of the blow. I do not look at him as he falls. There is no need. I have seen death too many times to linger on it now. The monks scatter further into the shadows, some of them trying to reach the doors that lead to the courtyard, others attempting to hide beneath the thick tapestries hanging from the walls. Their fear is palpable in the air, mixing with the smoke of the incense, creating a thick, choking atmosphere. I can taste the terror on the back of my tongue, a bitter metallic taste, and it only sharpens my resolve. We are here to take everything, everything they have. The silver glints in the flickering candlelight, beckoning like a siren's call. But I am not here for the riches alone. No, the heart of this raid is the taking of power, of strength, of life. The treasures will come, yes, but first we take what belongs to us. I hear a shout. One of my brothers, a warrior with a deep, gravelly voice. He calls to me from across the hall, his words unintelligible, lost in the heavy air, but I hear the sound of his blade cutting through the air as he advances on another monk, a silver chalice gripped tightly in his hand. Turn toward the sound, my hand instinctively reaching for the axe again. The blood rushes to my head, the anticipation of the next strike building within me. The flickering candlelight sways, casting long dancing shadows on the stone floor. The heat of the fire is beginning to rise, stoking something deeper inside me. The fear in the air mingles with the anticipation of battle. The soft murmur of prayers rises and falls like the waves, but I can feel their words grow fainter with each passing moment. Soon silence will fall upon the monastery, broken only by the sound of our blades and the thudding of bodies hitting the ground. As the final blow is struck, the smoke thickens, the flames grow brighter, and I find myself standing in the heart of the storm, the quiet aftermath settling over me like a blanket. I breathe deeply, taking in the weight of what has happened. The raid is far from over, but the first blow has been struck. The world is changing, and I am at the center of it. The next step lies ahead, and I will not hesitate. Fire and silver. The wind carries the scent of smoke and ash, a biting reminder of the destruction we've wrought. The village is burning, flames licking at the thatched roofs, turning the sky into a canvas of orange and red. The crackle of fire fills the air, loud and incessant, but beneath it all there is a haunting quiet. The village is dying, and with it, the lives that once filled it. Yet, as the fire spread, I feel nothing but a slow pulse of satisfaction. We have taken what we came for. The smoke wraps around me like a thick blanket, stinging my eyes and seeping into my lungs. My breath comes in heavy, rasping pulls, but I do not pause. The weight of the treasure I carry is both physical and spiritual, and it anchors me to this moment, to this place. I glance over my shoulder, watching as my comrades work. The others are moving swiftly, hauling chests of gold, relics, and carved idols, dragging them toward the shore where the longship waits like a beast hungry for spoils. Each piece of treasure is a small victory, a symbol of our strength, our power. The silver and gold gleam even in the dim light of the burning village, their surfaces reflecting the chaos around us. There are heavy chests, some of which I can barely lift, and delicate jeweled trinkets that I hold in one hand, admiring their craftsmanship. But there is one thing that stands out among the rest: a large, ornately carved wooden chest, decorated with runes and symbols I do not fully understand. It feels heavy in my hands, but it is not the weight of the wood that draws me. It is the way the chest seems to hum with an energy of its own, like it holds more than gold within. I do not know what treasures lie inside, but I do know this: it is the heart of our plunder. The flames crackle louder, the wind picking up and scattering embers like fireflies. The air is thick with heat, and yet I am unfazed. My tunic sticks to my skin, damp with sweat, but the discomfort does not distract me. My focus is on the chest, on the treasure I am carrying, and on the men around me. There is movement at the edge of the village, something in the smoke, a figure emerging from the shadows. A monk. His robes are singed, his face smudged with dirt and blood, but he stands tall. His eyes are not the eyes of someone broken. There is fire in them, defiance. He does not flee like the others. He does not tremble. Instead, he holds his ground, staring directly at me, as if daring me to approach. For a moment I pause, the wind shifts, and the smoke clears enough for me to see his face clearly. He is older than the others, his beard long and streaked with gray, but his gaze is unyielding. The village burns around us, but in this moment, it is just the two of us, him and me, locked in a strange battle of wills. He speaks, his voice low but steady. You are nothing but thieves, raiders who take what does not belong to you. I take a step closer, the weight of the chest pulling at my arms, the metal of the treasure cold against my skin. There is no fear in my chest, only the deep, comforting weight of the raid. The monk's words are like wind against a mountain. They do not reach me. I am here to take what is ours. His hands tremble slightly as they clutch the worn wooden staff that he carries. But still, he does not retreat. I almost admire his courage, though it is misplaced. There is no place for such defiance here. I take another step, the sound of my boots heavy against the charred earth. The fire crackles louder, but his gaze does not waver. He stands as a final bastion, the last hope of this dying village. I will not beg for mercy, the monk says, his voice rising slightly, though there is no tremor in it. The gods will not forgive you for this. The words settle in the air between us, and for a moment I almost feel a stir of something. Regret, doubt, the idea of gods and their forgiveness. Those are thoughts for other men, not me, not for one who lives by the blade. I shake my head slowly, watching the monk's chest rise and fall with each steady breath. He is brave, but it is a misplaced bravery. The world we live in, the world of warriors and gods, does not spare such defiance. Not here, not now. I feel the axe in my hand, its weight as familiar as my own skin. The wooden shaft is worn smooth from years of use. The blade, sharp and unforgiving. It has been through many battles, and it will be through many more. I grip it tightly and step forward. The monk does not flinch. He does not move. His eyes remain locked on mine, the fire within them still burning, still alive. He will not survive this raid, but for a brief moment I wonder if this is what he wanted: to die with honor, to die in defiance. Then, with a fluid motion, I swing the axe. It bites into the air, cutting through it with the certainty of a storm. The monk's body jerks as the axe connects, and he crumples to the ground, his staff falling from his hands with a soft thud. The fire behind him dances higher, as if the flames are celebrating the moment. but I feel nothing, only the same steady pulse of victory. The battle is over for him. The village is burning, the treasures are being carried to the shore, and there is nothing left but to claim the spoils. I take a final glance at the monk, lying in the shadow of the flames, his eyes still open, stare into the sky. The defiance is gone, replaced by something quieter, a resignation, perhaps, or the understanding that there is no escape from the storm we bring. I turn away, walking back to the shore. The weight of the treasure is comforting, steady beneath my grip. The sound of fire and distant screams fades as I approach the boat. The longship awaits, its dark silhouette against the burning village, the sea beyond calling us home. The men are gathering, hauling the last of the spoils onto the ship. Gold, silver, relics, prizes of our conquest. The ship creaks under the weight of our victory, and I know that soon we will sail again. This raid will be a tale to tell, a victory to boast of in the mead halls. But for now, as I place my treasure in the hold, I allow myself a moment of stillness. The fire burns behind me, but the ship waits for me and I am ready. The spoils are ours, and the sea calls. The journey is far from over, but for now, there is only the feeling of gold in my hands, the wind in my hair, and the taste of victory on my lips. The sounds of the battle still echo in my ears. The clash of steel, the cries of the fallen, and the distant roar of the fire, consuming the village we left behind. But now, silence has settled over the forest, thick and heavy, as if the trees themselves are holding their breath. The villagers who once filled the streets with frantic steps are now shadows, darting between trunks, fleeing into the woods. The chief's gesture is subtle but clear. A nod, and we are off, chasing what little remains of the enemy. I feel the weight of my weapon at my side, the familiar heft of my axe, though I do not expect to use it yet. There is no need for it. Not here, not with these frightened villagers running for their lives. Their feet, light and swift as they are, cannot match the speed of my boots hitting the damp earth beneath me. The ground is soft, moss-covered, and treacherous, but I know it well, every root, every stone. My feet find purchase with each step, my body moving as though it is a part of the forest, a shadow among shadows. The others are behind me, their footsteps fading as they scatter to surround the forest. But I do not slow. I am faster than them all, my breath steady, my legs burning with each powerful stride. The cool air cuts at my face, but I do not feel it. My mind is focused entirely on the chase, the hunt. The thrill of it surges through me, as it always does when the prey is near. The trees around me are tall, their trunks thick with age. Between them, the dappled light of the late afternoon seeps in, casting long, shifting shadows across the ground. The scent of pine and damp earth fills my nose, mingling with the faint, lingering traces of smoke from the fire we left behind. The forest is quiet, but I know it is full of life. Hidden creatures scurry beneath the undergrowth, watching, waiting. They know the sound of a predator's steps. I know theirs as well. Ahead I see a flicker of movement, a figure darting between the trees, too swift for my eyes to catch fully. I tighten my grip on the axe and quicken my pace, the rhythm of my breath matching the pounding of my boots against the earth. The distance between us shrinks with each step, but the villagers are not as slow as I had hoped. They are weaving through the trees, using the forest to their advantage, seeking to hide themselves within its darkened embrace. I push harder, muscles screaming in protest as I force my body to move faster, harder. The world around me blurs as I follow the faint rustle of leaves and the crack of twigs underfoot, the signs of their passage. It is a familiar rhythm, one I have followed many times before, and my instincts take over. My mind empties, and all that remains is the chase. The forest grows denser, the trees more twisted and tangled, Low branches scrape against my face, but I do not slow. My focus is unshakable, my body moving almost of its own accord. I hear another rustle ahead, louder this time. A woman, stumbling, her breath ragged with fear. She is slow. She knows she cannot outrun me. Her feet falter on the uneven ground, and for just a moment I see her face, eyes wide, fear written on her features. I close the gap between us, and when she turns, we lock eyes for a brief instant. There is no time for mercy in this moment, no room for hesitation. The chase is not over yet, and I am no savior to these villagers. I raise my hand, preparing to catch her, to end this, but just as quickly, a voice calls out from behind, a sharp whistle cutting through the stillness of the trees. The chief, he has seen the others, scattered in different directions. I hesitate, and in that moment, the woman vanishes, disappearing into the shadows of the trees. The forest swallows her up, and she is gone. For a heartbeat, I stand still, the only sound now the distant call of my comrades, the rustling of leaves in the wind, and the steady thrum of my pulse. The chase is not over yet, but I know it will soon be. We are closing in on them, trapping them in the forest like the prey they are. Turning to follow the chief's command, I let the moment slip away. My muscles still burn with the heat of pursuit, and the trees continue to stretch before me in their endless winding labyrinth. The forest is full of life, yet in this moment, it feels as if it is holding its breath. The shadows shift as the last light of day wanes, the sky above growing darker with each passing moment. Soon, night will fall, and we will be forced to halt. Perhaps not tonight, but soon. I hear the others, voices muffled in the distance, the sound of their search coming closer. My breath slows as I slow my pace, the tension in my body easing with the knowledge that our hunt is nearing its end. The forest will give up its secrets, and the villagers who thought they could escape will find no mercy here. A strange sense of calm washes over me as I stand still, listening to the sounds of the woods, the soft murmurs of nature beneath the rustle of leaves. The chase is done. My task is almost complete. The world around me settles like a deep breath taken after a long, tense moment, and for a moment, I am at peace with the quiet. I turn my gaze back to the shadows, to the silent, waiting figures ahead of me. Soon, we will have them all. Soon they will be captured, brought to the village where the spoils await. But for now, I am alone in the woods, alone with the slow rhythm of my own heartbeat, and the sense that the hunt is always a part of me, always with me, like the land beneath my boots and the sky above my head. And then, as the last light of the sun fades behind the trees, I hear the call of the chief once more, his voice stronger now, more urgent. It is time. The chase is over. The next chapter begins. The prize awaits, and I, the hunter, have done my part. Returning to the ship. The beach is quiet now, save for the rhythmic sound of the tide lapping at the shore, pulling away from the blood-soaked sand. It was once a place of life, a village brimming with people, their laughter and cries filling the air. But now it is nothing but a graveyard for the fallen, and a grave for the dreams of the villagers who once called it home. I stand at the water's edge, watching the gentle rise and fall of the sea, the wind tugging at the edges of my cloak, and I wonder how long it will take before the village is forgotten, swept away by the tide as though it never existed at all. The spoils of war are heavy on my back, though I do not feel their weight. Sacks of silver, gold, and relics, things stolen in the heat of battle, treasures that were not meant for our hands, but now are ours by right. They slung over my shoulders, their contents clinking softly, a sound that mingles with the last groans of the dying village. The laughter of my brothers in arms rings out behind me, their voices rough from battle and drink. a deep, throaty noise that rises and falls like the waves. Some of them boast of the riches they have claimed, while others speak of the next raid, eyes already filled with the promise of more blood, more victory. The fire of conquest has yet to burn itself out in their veins, but for me there is only the quiet pull of the sea, a distant promise of home. The ship waits for us, its prow gleaming in the dull light of the late afternoon, as though the vessel itself is eager to return to familiar waters. The tide rises, coaxing us toward the safety of the deep, urging us home before vengeance comes, before the sun fully sets on this island. I take a deep breath, inhaling the scent of salt and blood, and for a moment I feel the sting of the wind in my chest, like a silent reminder of the cost of what we have done. The air is thick with the smell of fire, wood and thatch still crackling behind me, sending tendrils of smoke swirling into the sky. I can taste the ash on my lips, bitter and sharp, and though it does not bother me, it reminds me of the finality of what we have achieved here. We came, we conquered, and we leave nothing but the echoes of our passing. One of the warriors near me grins, his teeth white against his sun-darkened face, and slaps me on the back. He is a large man, strong and loud, but there is a certain tenderness in the way his eyes flicker toward the sea. "This is a good haul, my friend," he says, his voice rough like the wind. "We'll be rich when we return to the homeland." I nod, though the thought of riches does not stir me the way it does him. The journey was not about treasure for me. It was never about what could be carried back in a sack. It was about the thrill of the fight, the rush of the battle, and the sense of belonging to something greater than myself. But now, with the smoke of the burning village curling up into the sky, it feels as though the fire has left me, leaving only the quiet hum of the sea and the growing tension of the storm that threatens on the horizon. I turn my gaze back to the ship, watching as the other warriors make their way toward it, some staggering under the weight of their loot, others wiping blood from their faces with the back of their hands. The ship is waiting, its wooden frame dark against the shifting waters. It is a beautiful sight, a creature born from the hands of skilled craftsmen, its sail fluttering weakly in the wind. The ship is our lifeline, our home on the water, and I can feel its pull, as though it too is beckoning me, calling me back to where I belong. The others are already climbing aboard, their movements hurried now, eager to leave the island behind. I take a final look at the shore, at the smoke rising from the smoldering buildings, at the wreckage of what was once a village. The wind shifts, carrying with it the faint sound of the cries of the women and children who were not fortunate enough to escape. I cannot help but feel the weight of it, but it passes quickly, swallowed by the roar of the sea and the laughter of my comrades. I step forward, my boots crunching on the sand, feeling the coolness of the tide creeping around my ankles. The water is colder than I expected, a sharp contrast to the heat of the fire behind me, but it is a welcome chill, a sign that the land is slipping away, and with it the ghosts of the village. With each step toward the boat, I leave something of myself behind, some part of the warrior who fought in the chaos, the bloodshed, and the conquest. It is not a loss. It is simply the nature of things, of what we do and who we are. We fight, we win, and we leave. The ship creaks as I step aboard, the familiar sound of wood shifting beneath me, and I exhale, my shoulders dropping as the weight of the beach, the battle, and the treasure falls away. The warriors who have already climbed aboard are settling in, securing the loot, their faces eager as they prepare for the long sail home. I find my place near the stern, leaning against the wood, watching the horizon where the sun is beginning to dip, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. The crew begins to row, their movements synchronized, a well-practiced rhythm that speaks of countless voyages, of battles fought and victories won. The ship begins to move, its keel cutting through the water as the wind catches the sail, guiding us forward. The rhythm of the oars is soothing, a steady pulse that matches the beat of my heart. I take one last look at the shore as it fades into the distance, the island growing smaller and smaller until it disappears entirely, swallowed by the vastness of the sea. I feel no triumph in the sight. There is no glory in the leaving. There is only the quiet, the pull of the ocean, and the promise of home. The sky above us darkens, and the wind begins to shift, pushing us forward as the sun dips below the horizon. The sea is calm now, its surface gleaming in the last light of day, a perfect mirror of the sky. We sail into the night, the ship cutting through the waters with ease, and I close my eyes, letting the sound of the waves soothe me. Tomorrow we will be home, but tonight, the sea is our home, and for now that is enough. 14. The long sail home. The sea is merciful today. The waves are calm, their gentle rise and fall a lullaby, each cresting ripple like a whisper of the deep. The wind is light, barely stirring the crimson sail above us, allowing the ship to glide forward. The world is quiet, save for the soft lapping of the water against the hull, the creak of wood beneath our feet, and the distant murmur of the crew. There are no shouts, no orders, no clashing steel. For the first time in what feels like a lifetime, the world is still. I sit at the edge of the longship, my hands resting loosely on the oarlocks, watching the horizon stretch before us. The sun sinks low in the sky, casting a golden glow over the sea that turns everything it touches to fire. The water gleams, reflecting the amber light like molten metal, and the clouds above, once heavy with the weight of the storm, are now streaked with hues of orange and pink, fading slowly into the darker shades of evening. The air is cool against my skin, carrying the scent of salt and earth from distant shores. The oppressive weight of the storm has lifted, leaving behind only the quiet embrace of the sea. The ship moves steadily, the oarsmen in the front of the boat silent now, their muscles relaxed after the battle and the exertion of the past days. A few of the crew have taken to sleeping, sprawled across the planks, their faces softened in the quiet peace that follows the chaos. The rhythmic motion of the oars gently lulls them into rest, their breaths deep and even. There is no need for conversation, no need for words. The silence is comfortable, filled with the knowledge that we have done what we came to do, and now we can rest. The air around us is soft, the wind barely enough to fill the sail, but still enough to carry us away from the shores we've left behind. There is no hurry now. The world is stretching out before us, wide and open, and the journey feels endless in the best of ways. The ship, our constant companion, seems to hum beneath me, as though it too is at peace after the storms we have weathered. It is a beautiful thing. This ship, a vessel of wood and iron that has carried us across the waters to distant lands, and now it carries us back home, carrying our spoils and our stories with it. The warriors around me are quiet, their voices hushed as the night falls. Some sleep, curled up in their cloaks, their bodies moving with the rise and fall of the ship, as if they are one with the sea. Others are more awake, their thoughts carried away on the breeze, murmuring quietly among themselves. They speak of the spoils we've gathered, gold, silver, fine silk, and treasures from the lands we've raided. They whisper of what they will buy when they return, the food they will eat, the women they will bed, the homes they will build with their newfound wealth. Their voices are low, almost tender, as though the journey has softened their edges, as though the quiet of the sea has made them more contemplative. I listen to their murmurs, but my mind is elsewhere. I find myself lost in thought, the words fading into the background as I think of what awaits us. Home. The thought stirs something deep within me, a longing I haven't allowed myself to feel during the heat of battle. I think of the village by the sea, where my kin wait, of the great hall, the warmth of the fire, the scent of roasting meat, and the sound of the skalds singing tales of gods and heroes. My body aches with the need to return to the familiar, to rest my bones after the months of raiding and sailing. But my heart is heavier than I expected. It is filled with memories of the fight, the thrill of conquest, the rush of battle. I wonder if it will ever be enough, if I will ever feel the same peace in the quiet of home that I do now, on the water, with nothing but the sea and the sky to surround me. The ship drifts on, the golden light of the sun sinking lower, stretching the shadows long across the water. The horizon is a blur of color now, the sky blending with the ocean in a seamless embrace, as though the two are not separate but one endless expanse. The world feels endless like this, as though there is nothing beyond the water, no boundary to the earth, just the endless quiet stretch of the sea. The peace of it settles over me, a soft balm for my restless soul. I pull my cloak tighter around my shoulders, feeling the coolness of the evening creeping in. But there is no discomfort in the chill. The warmth of the fire, the warmth of home is still distant, and for a moment I let myself imagine it. The warmth of the hearth, the familiar faces, the comfort of knowing that we have returned from the raids victorious. It is a thought that brings peace, though it is not yet real. For now, the sea is our home. I turn my eyes back to the sky, where the sun has nearly disappeared, leaving only the faintest traces of light along the edge of the horizon. The world is settling into twilight, the colors of the sky deepening into rich purples and blues, the stars beginning to flicker into existence one by one. The wind has died down even further, and the silence on the ship feels profound, as though the night itself is holding its breath. It is a perfect stillness, the kind that only the sea can offer, where time seems to slow, and everything feels balanced, as though the world is in harmony. The ship continues its steady course, and I feel the gentle motion beneath me, the swaying of the deck, as the ship moves through the water. There is no rush now. The battle is behind us, the conquest is done, and all that is left is the journey home. The sea seems endless, but in its vastness there is peace. I close my eyes for a moment, the sound of the waves and the distant murmurs of my comrades lulling me into a quiet calm. The stars above us grow brighter as the sky deepens, and the ship sails on, the darkness wrapping around us like a blanket. The world is calm now. The storm is gone. The battle is over. All that remains is the quiet, the rhythm of the oars, and the promise of home. The journey is not over, but it has slowed, the intensity of the fight now a distant memory. The sail flutters gently, and the night deepens around us. I sit back, letting the sea carry me, letting the stars guide us. For now there is nothing to do but drift, to let the journey unfold at its own pace, to surrender to the peaceful quiet that surrounds me. The world beyond the ship feels distant, as though it does not matter anymore. The sea is enough, and for now that is all that I need. Tomorrow we will be home, but tonight, the sea is our home, and for tonight, that is enough. Shadows on the water. The sea is endless tonight, stretching out beneath the cloak of darkness, the waves rolling gently, but with a certain, undisturbed power. The ship glides across the water, its wooden planks creaking softly, as if the very vessel is breathing, exhaling after the trials of battle, after the triumph of conquest. The air is cool, filled with the scent of salt and the faintest trace of earth, as if the shore is still within reach, yet just beyond the horizon. My breath forms clouds in the cold, and the night seems endless, a world of black water and dimming sky. I stand alone at the stern of the ship, my back straight against the chill, my eyes scanning the horizon, where the stars flicker like pinpricks of light, scattered across the vast velvet sky. The silence is almost oppressive now. The crew is quiet, some sleeping under the heavy blankets of their cloaks, others lost in their thoughts, their murmurs barely more than whispers. We are all weary, our bodies aching, our minds still racing with the echoes of the raid. But for now, the night holds us in its quiet embrace, and all we can do is move forward, toward the unknown, toward the home we've earned. Still, my watch does not end. I grip the hilt of my blade, fingers cold against the worn leather of the grip. It feels familiar, comforting, as it always has, but tonight there's a sharpness to it, a weight that is heavier than usual. My eyes narrow as I peer into the distance. The sea is dark, and I can hear only the faint splashing of water against the hull. There's a movement, just on the edge of my vision, a silhouette cutting across the water, its shape barely distinguishable in the inky night. I freeze, my breath held. My heart quickens. A ship. It moves against the waves, its form stark and unnatural against the dark expanse of water. I can't tell the size or the shape of it, only that it is there. Slowly I crouch down, drawing myself closer to the deck, my pulse thudding in my ears. A shadow of doubt creeps into my thoughts. Is it friend or foe? Are we being pursued? Or is this some distant vessel unaware of our presence? There is no way to know for sure in the depths of this night, not until they come closer. The wind shifts, whispering across the waves, bringing with it the faintest scent of smoke, but it is fleeting, lost in the deeper scent of the ocean. The shadow of the ship moves with the rhythm of the sea, its sail barely visible against the star-dappled sky. The ship is low, almost blending into the horizon. For a moment it feels as though the water and the night are conspiring to hide it from me. I stand motionless, my muscles coiled tight as a spring, my breath steady but controlled. The crew has not noticed yet. They sleep, unaware of the shadow on the water, unaware of the threat, or perhaps the relief of safety. I dare not wake them. There is no need to alarm them until I know for certain what it is we face. If it is an enemy, I will not hesitate. But if it is nothing more than a ship passing in the night, there is no reason to disturb the peace. I squint into the darkness, watching the shape as it moves steadily across the waves. I can feel the tension in the air, thick and heavy, like a breath held too long. My blade feels warm in my grip, a reassurance, but also a reminder of the danger that might be lurking just beyond the veil of night. I scan the edges of the water, the dark swell of the ocean rising and falling in the distance, swallowing the ship's shadow for moments at a time, then revealing it once more. The ship does not come closer. It drifts, weaving in and out of my line of sight, its silhouette growing fainter and more indistinct. Slowly my shoulders relax just a fraction. The tension that has been building within me begins to ebb away, but I do not yet lower my guard. The sea can be full of surprises, and in the dark it is difficult to trust what the eyes can see. The ship continues to move in silence. I watch its ghostly shape as it fades and then reappears in the rolling waves, but it does not draw nearer. It stays its course, indifferent to our presence, its crew unaware of the eyes that are upon it. After what feels like an eternity, the shadow finally disappears, swallowed whole by the vastness of the night. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. I remain in my crouch for a moment longer, my hand still gripping the hilt of my blade. The tension that had tightened every fiber of my being loosens, but I remain on alert, eyes still scanning the horizon where the shadow once was. The sea is silent again, the ship's steady rhythm beneath me the only sound that remains. Slowly the pulse of adrenaline fades, replaced by the steady, deep breath of the night. I stand, my limbs aching with the stillness, and I lower my sword. It feels odd, the quiet that follows the tension. The crew has not stirred, lost in their dreams, unaware of the brief moment of unease. I glance back over my shoulder, checking the others. No one moves. The stillness returns, the silence now almost peaceful. I step back, my senses heightened now, my mind still keenly aware of the dark expanse around us. The sea is vast, and in the blackness of night, it can be difficult to know what lurks just beyond the line of sight. But the shadow has passed, and for now the only danger is the one we already know, the journey home, the weariness in our bones, and the lingering memory of the battle. With a final glance at the darkened horizon, I return to my place among the crew. My muscles are tight from the tension, but the fear that gripped me moments ago is already beginning to slip away. I settle against the ship's railing, my fingers brushing the cool wood, and I turn my gaze once again to the stars overhead. The shadow has gone, and the only thing that remains is the steady pull of the sea beneath us. The night feels more peaceful now, though I know that peace can be fleeting. I take one last deep breath of the salt air, letting it fill my lungs. The sea moves steadily beneath us, and in the distance, the faintest glimmer of land appears on the horizon. For now, the ship sails onward, the silence unbroken, and the world seems vast, endless, and still. Homecoming. The ship slides gently into the shallows, the sound of the hull scraping softly against the sand as the tide pulls back, whispering against the shore. The mist of dawn hangs in the air, thin and delicate, like a veil between the worlds. The first light of morning casts a soft golden glow over the sea, spreading across the sky in a delicate wash of pinks and oranges. It is the color of peace, of rest, and of home. The smell of damp earth, salt water, and the faint trace of smoke from the fires that still burn in the village drifts over the air, mixing with the fresh scent of the morning. I stand at the bow of the ship, my gaze fixed on the shore. It has been weeks since we set sail, weeks of battle, of bloodshed, and of uncertainty. But now, as the land draws closer, a quiet weight lifts from my chest. The village is just ahead, small, familiar shapes rising against the edge of the water, smoke curling from the chimneys. The houses look the same, though their walls are weathered, their roofs slightly worn by the years. The stronghold where we left our families, where we left our loved ones, is now our destination. The crew stirs around me. The warriors, weary but proud, exchange quiet words, their voices low, as if reluctant to break the stillness of the moment. The weight of our spoils is in the air, but the weight of the journey is heavier still. The fear, the uncertainty, these fade into the distant past as the shore becomes real again. Some of the men smile, others nod in silent recognition of the journey's end. We have returned, and in our return, we carry the promise of a future built on the deeds of the past. The ship eases up further, the water glistening with the early light, lapping gently at the hull. I step forward, my boots sinking slightly into the soft, wet sand. My body feels heavy with the travel, the weight of battle still in my bones, but there is something else here, a sense of peace, of belonging that has been absent for so long. From the shore I see them now, the women and children of the village, huddled together, waiting. The men who did not venture on this journey stand tall behind them, their hands resting on the hilts of their swords, their faces etched with hope, waiting to see us, waiting to know if the raid has brought us victory or defeat. As the ship drifts closer, the tension that has followed me from far-off shores begins to dissolve. My heart feels lighter, my breath coming easier as I take in the familiar sight of home. The women are the first to move. Their voices ring out like the soft call of birds, high and clear against the quiet morning. Children run forward, laughing, their faces bright with joy. They wave their hands in the air, their feet kicking up the soft sand beneath them as they rush to meet us. I feel the warmth of their greetings long before I can hear the words. Their faces are full of hope, full of life. They rush forward, eager to see their fathers, their husbands, their brothers. I take a slow step forward, the sand warm beneath my boots, my heart still thudding in my chest. My arms are heavy, the weight of my sword, the memories of battle still present in the muscles of my shoulders. But none of that matters now. The sight of my people waiting for me, waiting for all of us, makes everything else fade into the background. The spoils of war, the bloodshed, the loss, these are nothing compared to the warmth of a homecoming. I make my way down the gangplank, the ship creaking softly beneath me as I step ashore. The women gather near the water's edge, their hands reaching out to greet the men returning from their journeys. Some kneel, others stand, but all are silent in that moment, watching as we disembark, their faces soft with relief. There are no words between us yet, only the unspoken recognition that we are home, and we are together once more. A child runs toward me, her small feet kicking up grains of sand as she comes. She is the daughter of a fellow warrior, and though I do not know her name, I know her face. She has grown in our absence, her hair longer now, her eyes brighter with the years. She holds her arms out to me, and for a brief moment, the world seems to pause. I kneel down, my knees sinking into the soft sand, and she throws herself into my arms, her tiny body warm against mine. "Father," she says, though her voice trembles and I smile. I am not her father, but in this moment, I feel as though I might be. We all are, for the village is a family, bound by blood and the sea, by the promises we keep and the burdens we carry. I lift her gently, holding her in my arms for just a moment longer. Her scent is fresh, a mixture of earth and salt, and I feel a connection to the land and the people like I've never felt before. This place, this village, is a part of me as much as the sea is. The warriors begin to step ashore now, one by one, each greeted by the familiar embrace of family, by the soft murmurs of affection, the relief in the eyes of the women, the smiles of the children. The men who stayed behind stand tall, their eyes scanning the horizon, watching us as we return. The village is quieter now, the excitement fading into a gentle calm, but the tension in the air has not completely vanished. There are still questions, still things unsaid. I place the child back on the ground, my hands lingering on her shoulders for a brief moment, then rise to my feet. As I turn to join the others, I catch sight of a familiar face, my own kin standing among the gathered crowd. My heart skips a beat as I meet his eyes, and the recognition is immediate. We have fought side by side in battle before, and now we stand together in the light of this homecoming, bound by blood, by the sea, and by the unspoken bond between brothers. I walk towards him slowly, my boots leaving deep imprints in the sand, and as I draw closer he raises his arm in greeting. The tension that has lingered in my chest loosens. The weight of the journey, of the bloodshed, of the spoils. These things become less important now. What matters is that we have returned. We are home. As we embrace, the world around us falls silent once more, and for the first time in weeks, I allow myself to simply breathe. The village stretches out before me, and the sounds of children laughing, of women calling to their loved ones, and the smell of home, the smoke from the hearts, the damp earth beneath our feet, the salt air, all of these things settle into my bones, reminding me of the simple beauty of life, and in this moment, I know that we are home at last. The warriors share. The longhouse is thick with the scent of sweat, smoke, and the heady tang of blood that has long since dried. The crackling of the fire fills the silence, the flames licking up toward the smoke hole in the roof, and the warmth of it washes over my face. It's a comfort, a small reminder of the peace that follows victory. My muscles ache from the weight of battle, But there is no pain here, only the quiet hum of the men's voices and the soft clinking of silver. I stand at the edge of the hall, watching as the chief oversees the division of our spoils. The treasure is spread out before him, glittering in the firelight. Silver coins, rings, armbands, and finely crafted weapons all spill across the wooden table, catching the flickering glow. It is a sight to behold, treasure enough to fill the deepest of chests, and yet it is nothing but the fruits of our blood-soaked labor. A small price to pay for what we have taken, but it is a price paid nonetheless. The warriors sit around the long table, their voices rising and falling in idle chatter. Some boast of their deeds, others share quiet jokes and laughter. Their hands move eagerly over the treasure, each warrior eyeing his portion, claiming what is rightfully his, or perhaps what he can convince the chief he deserves. It is a game we all play, though it is one without much subtlety. I watch them, but my eyes are not on the silver. No, I'm waiting for something else. The relic. It's been hours since we returned to the village, and yet the thrill of victory has not quite left my chest. There is something about the way the treasure gleams under the flickering light, something about the feel of the silver and gold in my hands that makes the battle seem distant, as if it's been forgotten already. And perhaps it has for some of the men, but not for me. Not yet. The relic is set apart from the rest, lying on a cloth that the chief has laid carefully over the table. It catches my eye the moment I step into the hall. Its shape is familiar, and yet it is a thing of mystery, a piece of the monastery's sacred history, stolen in the heat of battle. The golden cross, small and delicate, is encrusted with jewels, their colors deep and rich, as if they've been plucked from the very heart of the earth itself. The craftsmanship is like nothing I have ever seen. Its weight is a promise of the gods, of power, and in the right hands, I am certain it would hold more value than all the silver in the world. I stare at it now, my heart stirring. It is not mine yet, but I know that it will be. It has already claimed a part of me. The chief looks at me from across the room, his eyes assessing, his face hard but not unkind. He gestures to the silver on the table. It is time to choose. I take a deep breath, my boots heavy on the wooden floor as I step forward, the voices around me fading into the background. The air inside the longhouse is warm, thick with the scent of wood smoke and the lingering salt from the sea. It presses against my skin, a reminder of the journey we have made, the men we have lost, and the spoils we have earned. I run my fingers along the edge of a silver ring, tracing the smooth metal with the tips of my fingers. The coin pouch in front of me is heavy, a fair share for a warrior who has fought as hard as I have. But it is the relic I seek, the golden cross that seems to glow with its own light. I have no need for the silver, no need for the weapons. The fight was the reward, but this is something different, something sacred, a token of victory and of power. The chief speaks my name, and I look up, meeting his gaze. His expression is unreadable, but his tone is clear. He knows what I want. Perhaps he has already chosen to give it to me, though I am not certain. There are other warriors here, stronger, older, wiser, and they too have earned their share. But I feel a sense of ownership over this relic, a connection that no amount of silver can rival. I step forward and reach out, my hand closing over the cold, smooth surface of the cross. It feels heavier in my grasp than I had imagined, as though it carries the weight of something far older than this battle, older than this raid. It is a weight I welcome, a burden I accept. As my fingers curl around the edges of the relic, a sense of finality washes over me. This is my choice, my reward. The chief nods in approval, though his eyes remain distant. Perhaps he too feels the weight of what has been taken, or perhaps he simply knows that I have earned it, that I am one of the few who would dare to take such a thing and wear it proudly. It is a sign of power, of influence, of something more than just gold and silver. The other warriors watch me, their eyes flickering with both envy and respect. I feel their gaze, but I do not acknowledge it. The relic is mine now, and with it I have claimed a part of the monastery's history, a fragment of something sacred. It will stay with me, a symbol of what we have done, of what we have taken, and of what we have become. I turn away from the table, my hand still clutching the cross. My chest feels lighter, but there is still a quiet, simmering tension within me, as if the world has shifted in ways I do not yet fully understand. I walk toward the fire, the glow from the flames casting shadows across my face. The men continue to divide the treasure, some looking with admiration at their new weapons, others boasting of their spoils. But all of them are aware now, aware that I have claimed the relic, the one thing that stands apart from the rest. The longhouse seems quieter now, as if the weight of the relic has settled over all of us. There is no talk of future raids, no discussions of the next battle. Instead, the fire crackles, and the low hum of voices fills the air as we settle into our place for the night. There will be time enough for laughter, for stories, for sharing the spoils of victory. But for now there is only the quiet, the heat of the fire, and the weight of the relic in my hand. I sit down at the edge of the fire, my fingers still wrapped around the cross. The flames flicker in the dark, casting long shadows that stretch across the wooden walls. In the quiet of the moment, I feel a deep sense of connection to the men around me, to the village, to the land. The relic, now resting in my lap, is both a symbol of victory and a reminder of what we have taken. It will never leave me, not while I still breathe, for it is now part of me, and part of the legacy of this raid. Feasting and boasting. The great hall is alive with the warmth of firelight, the flickering torches casting long shadows against the walls, their light dancing like spirits in the flickering heat. The smell of roast meat, rich with the scent of salt and smoke, fills the air, mingling with the deep earthy tang of mead and sweat. The sound of voices, laughter, shouting, singing, fills the space, a comforting din of mirth and revelry after a hard-won victory. I sit near the fire, my skin warm from the crackling flames. The air is thick with the scent of roasted boar, and the hiss of meat dripping onto the hot coals is a familiar sound, one that reminds me of countless feasts long past. There is something about the feast that follows a raid, something deeply human in the way we celebrate our survival and our spoils. The fires burn bright, and the hall hums with the energy of a victory that feels as if it has taken root in the very marrow of our bones. The long tables stretch out before me, piled high with the fruits of our labor, loaf after loaf of thick, dark bread, chunks of cheese and roasted vegetables that crackle with the fire's heat. But it is the meat, the rich cuts of boar and venison, that take my attention. I tear into it with my hands, savoring the warmth, the salt, and the smoky richness. Each bite is a reminder of the battle we fought, the journey we undertook, and the sweat and blood that stained the earth beneath us. Around me, the warriors are lost in their own revelry. Some shout over the table, their faces flushed with the drink, their voices loud as they boast of their deeds. Others laugh, their heads thrown back, faces glowing with joy as they sip from their horns, their eyes sparkling with the firelight. Mead spills onto the wooden floor as hands tremble with excitement, and a deep, rich laughter fills the space, a sound that is both comforting and thrilling. In the corner of the hall, the skalds stand, their voices rising and falling in the rhythm of the old stories. The flickering shadows make their faces hard to read, but their words are clear, carried by the rising warmth of the fire. The gods and men, warriors and kings are all part of the tales they spin, their stories woven together in the language of the ancients. I listen, captivated by the way their voices swirl and climb, how they shape the air with their words, breathing life into tales of valor and bloodshed. The skald's voice rises and falls, each word a hammer on the anvil of time. I can feel the weight of history in the way he speaks, the stories of gods and warriors that stretch back far beyond my own life. His words call forth images of mighty battles, the clash of swords and shields, the roar of the gods themselves echoing across the heavens. The fire crackles louder in the hearth, and I feel myself drawn into the tale, as though the hall itself becomes the battleground, and I stand shoulder to shoulder with those who have fought before me. A boast rings out from the far side of the table, pulling my attention back to the present. One of the warriors, his beard matted with mead, stands, raising his horn high in the air. He shouts to the hall, his voice ringing with confidence, declaring his own prowess in battle, his own deeds. The men cheer, clapping their hands against the tables, the sound reverberating through the hall. Another voice joins in, and then another, until the hall is full of the sounds of men recounting their victories, telling stories of slashing blades, blood spilled and enemies felled. I lean back against the wall, letting the warmth of the fire wash over me. The mead is sweet, and I take a long drink from my horn, the liquid burning down my throat in the best of ways. There's a heady joy in this moment, in the camaraderie of battle-born men gathered together to honor what we've won. Each one of us has earned our place here. Each one has spilled blood or taken risks, and now we drink to that glory, triumph, and the gods who have favored us. The hall seems to pulse with life, the rhythmic rise and fall of voices a heartbeat that echoes in my chest. The skalds continue their songs, and the laughter and boasting mix together in a lively hum, a song of the present and the past. The air is warm, thick with the scent of mead and the heat of the fire. My body feels heavy, but in the best way, as if the weight of the world has softened in this place of celebration. The fire flickers low, but it is no less bright in its warmth. I glance around the hall, my gaze lingering on the faces of my comrades. Some are still talking, still weaving stories and retelling old tales. Others have grown quieter, their eyes glazed over in that relaxed haze that follows too much drink. A few have fallen asleep where they sit, their heads lolling to the side, their bodies slumped in the comfortable peace that follows the chaos of battle. The night stretches on, the fire slowly dying down as the men begin to tire, their voices becoming softer, less frequent. The hall is quieter now, but the warmth of the fire still lingers in the air, and the smell of roasted meat hangs heavy in the shadows. I sit back, my horn empty, my mind quieted by the rhythm of the night. It is a good kind of silence, the kind that comes after a long, hard day when there is no more need for words, no more need for anything other than the quiet comfort of being home, surrounded by comrades who understand the weight of the journey. The skald's voice fades into the background as the fire begins to die. The men's laughter softens into murmurs, and the hum of the hall slows, turning into a soft murmur, like the distant sound of waves lapping at the shore. It is the quiet of a long day ending, of victory now sealed in the warmth of the hall, in the laughter and the drink. Some of the men are already asleep, their breathing slow and deep, their bodies sprawled across the wooden benches. Others remain seated, staring into the embers of the fire, their minds far away. But for me, I sit in the quiet, my thoughts drifting as the warmth of the fire wraps around me, lulling me into a kind of peace I can hardly describe. The night stretches on, and slowly the laughter and singing die down, leaving only the soft crackling of the fire. As the men begin to fade into sleep, I feel the weight of the journey settle once more upon me. Tomorrow will bring a new day, a day of decisions, of the choices that lie ahead. But for now I allow myself to be lost in the quiet, the warmth, the comfort of the fire. Tomorrow can wait. Tonight I rest. Old warriors, older stories. The fire at the far end of the hall has burned low, its once fierce flames now flickering softly, casting long shadows that stretch across the wooden walls. The warmth of the fire still lingers in the air, but its light is dimming, like the last moments of a day that has gone on too long. The chatter of the feast has quieted, and the men have spread out, some finding their places to sleep, others drifting into quiet conversation. I have found myself at the edge of the hall, near the fading glow of the hearth, drawn to the stillness. It is here, in the dimmest part of the hall, that the old warriors gather. They are the ones who have seen more seasons than most, their faces weathered by the sun, their hands calloused and scarred. Their bodies are no longer as strong as they once were, but their eyes still hold the sharpness of a hawk, and their voices, when they speak, carry the weight of lifetimes lived in the shadow of war. One such warrior pulls me aside as I stand near the edge of the firelight, his face hidden in the folds of his beard, the scent of salt and sweat heavy around him. His voice is rough, like the rasp of stone against steel, and his words come slowly, as if they have been waiting years to be spoken. He is the kind of man whose stories fill the spaces between breaths, whose presence in the hall is marked not by words but by the weight of his years. I listen, knowing that whatever he has to say will be of a different sort than the tales of battle and feasting shared by the younger men. The world is wider than you think, he begins, his voice thick with the kind of weariness that only comes with age, and the seas are deeper than they look from the shore. His words hang in the air like smoke, curling and drifting, not meant to be rushed, not meant to be questioned. His eyes are distant as he speaks, and I follow his gaze, looking into the shadows where the firelight cannot reach. There, it seems, his mind wanders to places I cannot see. I was once like you, he continues, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword, the familiar weight of it grounding him, full of fire, eager to take what we wanted. But time, lad, time has a way of changing a man. It smooths the sharp edges, softens the hunger. His voice falters for a moment, and I watch the way his fingers tighten around the hilt, a subtle reminder of what he once was. He pauses as if to gather his thoughts, his eyes flicking back to mine, sharp despite their years. There are lands far beyond these shores, where the wealth of the world lies waiting, gold beyond counting, silver so bright it burns your eyes. But it's not just gold, no, he says, shaking his head slowly. There are things in those lands that no man has ever seen. Stories of riches are easy to come by, but those places are not for the faint-hearted. They're not meant for warriors like you and me. Not really. He leans in closer now, his breath heavy with the scent of meat and wood smoke. The fire crackles in the background, but his words are quieter, almost a whisper, as though he fears the flames might carry them away. I've seen them, he says, his voice lowering to a near whisper. I've sailed the waters, passed beyond the land that most men know. There's a place on the other side of the world, where the sun seems to never set, where rivers flow through lands that glow with light, and the people, the people are unlike any you've met. They speak in a tongue you cannot understand, and their lands are rich with harvests and jewels that even the gods would envy. But there's a cost, boy. There's always a cost. I sit back, listening, my mind trying to grasp what he means. His words paint a picture so far removed from anything I have ever known. In my mind, I see vast shining rivers winding through towering forests, golden cities with walls that gleam like the sun itself. The idea is intoxicating, but there is something in his tone, in the way his hands tremble slightly, that suggests there is more to this story than the treasures he describes. There are no easy victories in that land, he continues, his voice firm now, his gaze locking with mine. The people who dwell there, they are not like us. They will not fall to steel and fire as easily as the villages we raid. They are warriors of a different kind, and there are gods there too. Gods with names you will not know and powers you cannot imagine. Do you think you could take what they have, boy? Do you think your sword will cut through what lies beyond the horizon? You are not the first to seek it. I am silent for a long moment, the weight of his words settling over me like a thick cloak. The fire crackles and the distant murmur of the hall's remaining revelers drifts over the quiet space between us. The warrior watches me, his eyes not challenging, but curious, as if he is waiting for my response. I do not know, I answer slowly, truthfully. I do not know what lies beyond the horizon, but I do know that I will never find peace unless I see it for myself. The old warrior nods, his eyes softening. He doesn't say anything for a long moment, just watches the fire flicker, his thoughts lost in the past. When he finally speaks again, his voice is quieter, more reflective. Peace, he repeats, the word tasting strange on his tongue. I have heard it said, lad, that peace is something you find when the blood is gone, when the sword is sheathed, and the battles are finished. But I have also heard it said that peace is a lie we tell ourselves. The world is made of wars, and there will always be something to fight for, or against. His gaze lifts from the fire, settling on me one last time. You'll find it if you're meant to. But know this, what you seek, you will not be the same man when you return. If you return, the weight of his words sits heavily in the air between. He doesn't wait for me to respond, but instead turns away and shuffles back to the shadows where the older warriors gather, lost in their own quiet, knowing conversations. I sit there a moment longer, my eyes lost in the dying embers of the fire, the shadows lengthening across the hall. The old warrior's tale lingers in my mind like a distant whisper, the hint of something greater than what I know, a world beyond my reach, a world that calls to me. The night is thick with silence now, the last of the revelers quieting, their voices fading into the darkness. But my thoughts are far away, drifting over the waters to lands I have never seen, to a treasure greater than any I've ever known. And the old warrior's words haunt me. As the fire flickers and dies, I stand slowly, feeling the weight of the tale settle into my bones. The night stretches on, and my mind churns with thoughts of far-off lands, of wealth and power, of warriors and gods I have yet to meet. Tomorrow will bring the next step, but for tonight, I remain on the edge of legend, lost in the quiet hum of the hall. A challenge for the future. The feast has begun to quiet, the raucous laughter and the clinking of mead cups slowly giving way to a heavier, more contemplative atmosphere. The fire flickers in the hearth, casting long shadows across the long hall, and the scent of roasted meat and smoked fish hangs in the air, thick with the warmth of the day's celebration. But in this moment, the joy of the feast seems to slip away as the weight of the chief's gaze falls upon me. I sit near the high table, the thick wooden beams above us creaking in the stillness, the low murmur of the warriors settling into tired whispers. The men around me have loosened their belts, their bellies full, and their minds drowsy with mead. But there is something different in the air now, something quiet and waiting. The chief, always an imposing figure, has watched me from across the table, his eyes narrowed but unreadable, his hand resting on the hilt of his own great axe. The glint of its iron blade catches the light as he shifts slightly, his gaze never leaving me. And then, without warning, his voice cuts through the hushed murmurs of the hall. Will you sail again? The words hang in the air like a challenge, a question heavy with the weight of unspoken things. For a long moment, the room seems to still entirely. The fire crackles softly, but the lively chatter has died, and even the most talkative warriors have quieted to hear the chief's question. I can feel their eyes on me, as if they are waiting for an answer that will shape not just my fate, but perhaps theirs as well. Will I sail again? The question seems simple enough, but it gnaws at me like a biting wind. Will I? The words twist in my mind, a thread unraveling, taking me back to the long journey we've just returned from. to the village we burned, to the treasure we seized, to the monks we left behind in the ashes of their monastery. Will I sail again? I look down at my hands, still calloused from the sword, the rough grip of the oar, the weight of the shield, the echoes of battle, still cling to my skin, to my spirit. The sea has always called me, a restless rhythm that stirs my blood and keeps me awake when the nights grow long and the winds blow cold. But now there is something different in the question, something more than the simple desire for adventure. The mead in my cup has cooled, and I take a slow sip, allowing the bitter taste to settle on my tongue as I contemplate the answer. The heat from the fire warms my face, but I can feel the cool breeze that flows through the hall's open windows. It is a reminder that the world beyond these walls is vast, and that the seas are endless. What lies beyond the horizon, and what price must be paid for what we seek? The chief's eyes do not leave me. His face is as stoic as ever, but I can see something in his gaze, something more than just the casual curiosity of a leader. His eyes are thoughtful, as though he already knows the answer, but is waiting for me to voice it, to make the decision for myself. I can hear the faint crackle of the fire, the distant murmur of the men at the other end of the hall, but for the first time in a long while, I feel a weight settle on me, one that has little to do with the spoils of our raid or the weight of my armor. The question lingers, and I let it settle into me. Will I sail again? I glance up at the chief, meeting his steady gaze. The flicker of the fire catches in his eyes, and for the briefest moment, I see something there, an unspoken understanding, a challenge perhaps. He is not just asking about the next raid. He is asking about my future, about the kind of warrior I wish to be. A new challenge looms on the horizon. The fires of battle have burned bright, but they always fade. The question is whether to keep chasing them, or to find something else, something more. My heart is heavy with the weight of the world beyond this hall, beyond the endless cycle of raids and battles. But is there anything else for a man like me? I shift in my seat, feeling the weight of the axe at my side. The coolness of its handle against my fingers brings me back to the present. The question still lingers, the tension palpable in the air. My answer is not just for me. It is for the chief, for the men in the hall, for the future of our people. I set my cup down slowly, the gentle thud of it against the wooden table cutting through the silence like a signal. The men watch, their eyes following every movement, sensing the shift in the room. The quiet stretches on, thick and heavy, and I know that I must speak. I will sail again. I say, my voice steady, though it comes with a heaviness that surprises even me. The sea calls me, and I will answer it, but not for glory, not just for treasure. There are lands yet to be seen, worlds beyond the horizon. There are things I need to understand. My words settle over the hall, and for a moment there is nothing but the quiet crackle of the fire. I can feel the chief's eyes on me, but his expression does not change. He only nods once, slow and deliberate, as if he has been expecting this answer all along. Then it is settled, he says at last, his voice deep and final. You sail again. I feel a strange sense of relief wash over me, though it is tinged with something else, a feeling I cannot quite name. It is not fear, but it is something close to it. The weight of the decision, the weight of the future, presses down on me like the cold wind from the sea. The solitude of night. The village is quiet now. The fire in the longhouse has dimmed, and the laughter of my comrades has faded into the quiet hum of sleep. The air carries the scent of wood smoke, faint and distant, mingling with the dampness of the earth after the evening's chill. The only sounds are the occasional rustle of the wind in the trees and the soft murmur of the waves against the shore. I stand alone at the edge of the water, my boots sinking slightly into the wet sand as I gaze out over the dark expanse of the sea. The moon hangs high, a pale silver disk in the ink-black sky, casting a quiet light over the landscape. The world is still, yet I can feel the pulse of life all around me. The land, the sky, the sea, they all seem to breathe in unison. Each wave that laps at my feet a reminder of something ancient, something eternal. The village behind me is tucked in for the night. The torches flicker out one by one, and the soft murmurs of slumber echo from the longhouses. There's peace here, a deep, comforting stillness that should make my heart light. But instead, there is a weight upon my chest, a heaviness that settles deeper with every passing moment. I run my fingers through my hair, the cool night air slipping past my skin like a whispered breath. There is peace here, but peace has never been what I sought. I am not made for stillness. The sea calls to me, her distant, unrelenting rhythm a song that never ceases. I listen closely, hearing the rise and fall of the waves, feeling the pull of the tide as though it were a part of me. An invitation, a summons to lands yet unseen, to dangers yet to be met. The moonlight dances on the water, its silver sheen painting the ocean with a soft glow. The waves ripple gently against the shore, their rhythm both calming and unsettling. I take a slow step forward, the cold water seeping over my boots, the sensation a sharp contrast to the warmth of the village behind me. The sand beneath my feet is cool, and the wind carries the salty tang of the sea with it, filling my lungs with the scent of the far-off horizon. My thoughts drift, and for a moment, the world feels far away. The weight of the axe at my side seems distant, as though it too longs for something beyond the here and now. My fingers move to its handle, tracing the worn wood, the cold iron of the blade beneath my touch. The axe has been my companion through countless battles, through storms and raids, through the fires of war. But now, in this stillness, it feels heavy with the weight of choice. I pull my gaze back to the water, watching as the silver moonlight reflects off the surface. There is something in the way the waves crash against the shore, an unspoken promise, a reminder that the journey is never truly over. The sea has no end. It stretches out beyond what I can see, beyond what I can touch, always beckoning, always whispering of lands to the west, of distant shores and strange peoples, of new battles to be fought. I know the call of the sea. I felt it since I was a child. It is in my blood, in my very bones, the deep primal need to venture out, to explore, to fight, to conquer. And yet, the village is warm. The hearth fires are quiet and safe. There is peace here now, a peace that has eluded me for so long. I've walked so many long roads, faced so many battles, that the idea of simply staying feels foreign. It is tempting, this peace, this sense of belonging. But the sea sings to me, a melody that tugs at something deeper inside. I take a slow breath, my chest rising and falling with the tide, the coolness of the night air filling my lungs. I can hear the soft cries of gulls in the distance, their wings cutting through the sky in dark silhouettes against the moon. The world feels vast out here, empty in the most profound way, as though there is nothing but me and the sea, a lone figure in the dark, searching for meaning in the silence. A part of me wonders if I will ever find that peace. I glance back at the village, the smoke still rising faintly from the hearths, the silhouettes of the longhouses huddled together beneath the dark sky. The people sleep, unaware of the thoughts that pull at my heart. But I am not like them. I never have been. I am a warrior, a raider. My life has always been about the next battle, the next fight, the next horizon. But now, with the weight of everything we've done, everything we've taken, I wonder if there is more to life than just the endless cycle of war and victory. I push the thought aside, forcing my focus back on the sea. The world beyond the shore feels vast, infinite, a mystery that calls to me. The salty air clings to my skin, the coolness of the water beneath my feet, grounding me in this moment. There is no hurry here. The world waits, the sea waits, and so do I. I close my eyes for a moment, just listening to the sound of the waves, the wind, the distant calls of the birds. There is something in this stillness that soothes my restless heart, a quiet that lingers in the spaces between the waves, in the spaces between my thoughts. It's a silence that is not empty, but full of possibilities, full of promise. I stand there for what feels like hours, lost in the rhythm of the water and the pull of the night. The moon climbs higher in the sky, casting a silver path across the water, a path leading somewhere, anywhere. And yet, I do not move, I do not follow. For now I simply stand. In the distance, I hear the soft crackling of a fire. The village is still there, still waiting, but the sea pulls me in the opposite direction. Whispers of unknown shores and forgotten lands echoing through the wind. There will come a time when the call of the sea is too strong, when I can no longer resist. But for tonight, I am content to stand at the water's edge and listen, as the waves lap against the shore and the night stretches on. For tonight, I am at peace. For tonight, the world can wait. As the night deepens and the fire in the longhouse grows dimmer, the peace that the sea has offered begins to fade into the distant murmur of the village. The first light of dawn breaks the horizon, and with it a new day begins, one that may demand more than the quiet of the night. The men around the table resume their conversations, though the air feels different now, charged with the quiet energy of something new. The fire crackles softly, and the distant hum of the hall begins to fill the space once more. But I remain seated, my thoughts drifting far beyond these walls, far beyond the longhouse and the hearth. I feel the sea calling again, a constant pull that tugs at my very soul. The journey is not over, it has only just begun. As the hall returns to its laughter and the clinking of mead cups, I stand and step away from the table, my mind lost in the horizon that beckons. The decision has been made. The ship waits for me, and with it the future uncertain but mine to face. The silence of sleep. The fire crackles softly in the hearth, its embers glowing like the last whispers of a long, weary day. The flickering light dances across the walls of the longhouse, casting shadows that sway lazily in the silence. The world outside has long been swallowed by night. The sea, vast and unknowable, rests quietly beneath the pale silver gaze of the moon. The winds are calm now, as though the earth itself is finally taking a deep, steady breath. Inside, the hall is warm, the heat from the fire mingling with the weight of fatigue that rests heavily on my shoulders. The clinking of mead cups and the distant murmur of voices have faded, swallowed by the slow rhythm of my own breath. I lean back against the wooden posts, my body sinking into the familiar comfort of my place by the fire. The quiet of the night wraps around me like a heavy cloak, its embrace soft yet unyielding. For a moment there is nothing but the sound of my pulse in my ears and the slow crackle of the flames before me. The others have found their rest, some on the floor, some huddled beneath the woven tapestries that line the walls. The snoring of warriors, deep and steady, fills the spaces between the moments of silence. Their breath, slow and rhythmic, a sound I have heard countless times, becomes part of the background of this place. It is comforting in its familiarity. Their slumber is the rest they have earned, the peace they now claim after the storm of battle has passed. But it is not just the others that rest. It is I too who must lay down my burdens for a time. I close my eyes, just for a moment, letting the weight of the day's events slip from my mind. The battle, the raids, the laughter, the losses. These things seem distant now, like fading memories on the edge of a dream. The warrior's life is filled with moments of sharp clarity, but in the silence of this hall those moments soften, blur, and finally dissolve into the quiet hum of rest. My fingers, once so tight around the hilt of my blade, now loosen and fall gently to my side. The weight of the axe against my side seems far away. The sword, so familiar and deadly, feels more like a distant echo of who I once was, a warrior, a conqueror, but no longer the one who seeks endless bloodshed. My breath deepens, filling my chest with the warmth of the fire and the stillness of the night. I hear the crackle of the logs as they shift in the fire, the slow dance of the flames like a quiet lullaby. I allow the heat to wash over me, the crackling sound to soothe me further into the lull of sleep. The warmth of the fire, the softness of the furs beneath me, the quiet murmur of the warriors around me, all of it becomes part of the same rhythm, part of the same pulse. The memories of the sea, of the ships rocking beneath me, now fade. The salt on my skin, the cry of the gulls, the spray of the waves, all of these things so vivid only hours ago, now slip from my mind like water running through my fingers. Even the glint of the silver, the weight of the plunder we have taken, feels light as a feather in my mind's eye. It drifts away with the thoughts of the storm, of the long hours spent at sea, battling both the elements and enemies. The only thing left is the fire and the steady, gentle pull of sleep. The shadows in the hall shift as the flames dance, painting brief, fleeting images against the walls, images of warriors, of ships, of the gods themselves. But these images do not linger long. They melt into the darkness, blending with the quiet that surrounds me. Time, too, seems to slow, the hours stretching out like long shadows that blend into the night. The air in the hall is thick with the scent of wood smoke and earth, the smell of the sea that lingers in my clothes, in my hair. It is the smell of the world I know, the world that feels both vast and small at once. The sea calls to me, but not now, not tonight. Tonight, I am here. Tonight, I am as much a part of the world as the flickering fire, the distant stars, the silent warriors around me. I am one with this place, one with the silence that stretches out beyond the walls of the hall, beyond the edge of the village. I feel my muscles relax as my body sinks deeper into the furs, the weight of the world fading slowly away. The cold of the night no longer reaches me, for I am wrapped in warmth, both physical and spiritual. My mind quiets, the thoughts of battles fought and challenges ahead dimming as the gentle pull of sleep becomes stronger, more insistent. There are no dreams tonight, no visions of far-off shores or battles yet to be won, only the steady hum of my breath, the slow beat of my heart, the crackling fire, and the weight of sleep, heavy as the axe at my side. The world slips into stillness. I think of nothing, I feel nothing. I simply am. Time fades, leaving only this moment, and then nothing more. The silence of sleep settles over me like a blanket, soft and comforting. It is a silence unlike any other, a silence that carries no weight, no demands, no need for action or thought. It is a silence of peace, of rest, of surrender. The sea, the fire, the warriors, the battles, all of it fades into the quiet dark. I close my eyes, and then, nothing. The story ends here, for now.